This story begins with a young man asking why she wants to resign. Perhaps she was offended in some way. The girl replied that there were no special reasons, she just thought that she was already old. The guy exclaimed, "I mean, 40 years is the most energetic age." Our heroine asked what was the matter, why he was so excited. Maybe he was sorry that they would not see each other again. The life of a mercenary is hard even for young guys. If she stays, she will only be a burden to their mercenary guild. But still, thanks for trying to stop her. The young man replied that since she needed to leave so much, then let her leave, since it was already disgusting to look at her. On the way, the girl thought about the fact that she had warned him several months in advance that she would be leaving, but it seemed that he was upset. Perhaps she should go back and console him, although it would be better not to, since she had already left. She needs to think about what she wants to do for the rest of her life. Maybe open a tavern or a restaurant. She's probably too old for a cafe. After some time, there was a knock on the door. Our heroine could not understand who it was, but the aura was ominous. Suddenly, the door was knocked down by a crowd of people shouting that they needed to grab it quickly. But the room turned out to be empty, since Ilian managed to escape through the window. Then people shouted that it was necessary to go in pursuit. The road she was running along led to the square, but at such a time there were probably few people there. Therefore, she decided that it would be better to run into the forest, since she could hide there. At that time, her pursuers noticed her and shouted that she had run in that direction. Having run through part of the forest, the girl found herself trapped, since there was a cliff ahead and water below and there was no road. The man exclaimed that she runs well, is so nimble, has retired, but her legs still carry her. Our heroine said that if they want to get her body intact, it would be better not to make such a fuss. Why are they even pursuing her? Because she should know why they want to kill her. One of them stated that a few months ago, she was in the village of Finton, wasn't she? Our heroine asked if he meant the place where the villagers united and mocked the girl. The young man exclaimed that she was impudent. In fact, this is a tradition of their village. Genry was outraged that the guys really call it a tradition that they take a girl from a neighboring village and beat her to death for the sake of sacrifice. Do they even know what she had to go through? The mercenary was simply carrying out an order from her father, who had spent all his fortune to save his daughter. The guys said that she interfered with their tradition, so they waited for the moment when she left the mercenary guild. Now the girl is alone, and she cannot defeat them alone. Ilian thought that, indeed, she had always been alone. She had no family to protect, no loved one, not even friends. Our heroine lived her whole life like this, and then now and henceforth she will always be alone. After which she said, okay, how much is her life worth? Surely not less than 10,000 gold if she dies. They will get the money, right? When asked how she knew this, the girl replied that she had been a mercenary for many years, and if they were going to kill her, they would have done everything quietly. When she was told to give up since she had no other options, our heroine laughed and said that, well, at least she could make fun of them before she died. After which she jumped down, thinking to herself that she was not sure that she could live alone. She had no reason to die, but she also had no reason to live. Suddenly, for some reason, she remembered Julius. When he hears about her death, he will surely be sad. This guy received reports about Ilian Genry every day for 15 years. What she did during the day, whether everything was okay with her health, rather insignificant details, but the young man liked to listen to it. In the gray world of Alrihart, stories about this girl were the only joy until he was informed that she had died. When our heroine began to slowly open her eyes, a commotion of servants began around her, shouting that it was necessary to call a doctor. After she asked for water, she could not understand what was wrong with her voice. The girl remembers how she fell off a cliff and drank a lot of water. Taking the glass in her hands, our heroine was surprised why it was so huge. It was somehow strange. The maid asked if everything was okay with Miss Haven. Hearing this name, she was very surprised. The maid couldn't understand why the little one didn't remember them. Dino told her that she was probably confused, so he couldn't pressure her. The maid still didn't understand how she could forget them. Our heroine carefully said that it turned out she was 12 years old. The girl answered that that was exactly it. Last year she was so happy that she finally finished the humanities class. The little girl muttered that she had lost consciousness when she fell out of the carriage, and not when she fell into the water, the maid confirmed. Looking at her hands, The girl thought to herself that her flabby skin had suddenly become young and elastic. She so heroically jumped into the water so that those people would not get the money, and in the whirlpool she desperately tried to swim out to stay alive, but in the end she drowned. When asked what year it was, the maid replied that according to the giraffe calendar, it was the year 218, fourth month. The little girl noted to herself that at least this was the empire where she grew up, but the day of her resignation was in the 12th month of the year 228. This means that she is in the body of a 12-year-old girl and has returned 10 years ago? This simply cannot be. The maid decided to remind that her name is Tafa, and this guy is a knight named Dino. The little one waved her hand, apologized, and asked them to go out, as she was a little tired. The girl immediately touched her forehead with her hand and asked if she was sure everything was okay. The little girl was surprised why she was asking. The maid answered because the Miss Haven Winter she knew was so timid that she couldn't even ask to leave her room. Then she came to her senses, bowed, and asked for forgiveness for allowing herself to judge someone. Let him forgive her. The little girl replied that it was okay. She shouldn't think about it, it was better to rest, because they said that they looked after her while she was sleeping. But before the guys could take a step, some red-haired woman burst into the room. She immediately went to our heroine and said that since she had come to her senses, she should put her signature here. When asked who she was, the woman was indignant that she had really forgotten her own aunt and what her father had taught her. The maid intervened in the conversation and told Mrs. Seran that the little one did not yet know complex words. The woman immediately slapped her and exclaimed that what an impudent servant she was. Where was she even going to go with her advice? This situation made the young man very angry, so it was extremely difficult for him to control himself. Kabalka immediately switched to him and asked who he was, pretending to be a noble knight and whether he was really going to hit her, an aristocrat. Then she turned again to our heroine and ordered her to sign where she said, the girl began to read what was written there, namely, that she agreed to renounce the right to all of Winter's property and was transferring the right to everything to her guardian, Rosanna. The aunt was indignant. Why was she reading this? And even out loud, she was just told to sign. Tearing the paper in half, the girl noted that it seems that nowadays people are more interested in money than in the health of their relatives, although 10 years ago it was like that. Rosanna screamed what Haven was doing. The little one calmly asked if she couldn't see that she was tearing paper. Moreover, after she finished tearing it into small pieces, she immediately threw them in her aunt's face. The woman became completely furious and screamed, "Does she really think she can get away with this? After all, the missus is her guardian." The girl replied that, yes, she understood everything perfectly well, and now let her get out of here. Then she turned to the knight and said that he served the Winter clan, so he should throw out this lady immediately. The young man immediately began to escort her to the door, and Rosanna screamed for him to take his dirty hands off her, because she could go out herself. The maid carefully said that this woman would become her guardian. Was she sure that she was doing the right thing? The little one noted to herself that everything was clear. The girl was 12 years old, she had lost her parents, and now she needed a legal guardian. The girl added that Mrs. Seran was a bit rude, but she was her only blood relative, so she couldn't be treated like that. Our heroine objected that, in fact, she was not obliged to transfer all her property to her guardian. And this means that it is necessary to make sure that she does not need any guardian for 6 years. After some time, she thought that it was incredible, but it seemed that she really had returned 10 years ago, and even into the body of a 12-year-old girl. In her head, there remained memories from the life of 40-year-old Ilian Genry. The Green Dawn Mercenary Guild, with whom they risked their lives together, they participated in so many battles. And also her little and dear son, closer to whom she had no one. Remembering him, she immediately grabbed the calendar and noted that it was now the year 218 according to the giraffe calendar, which meant that this would happen in 5 years in the second month of the year 223rd. On a day when a piercing wind blew and there was a snowstorm, her only son died. His name was Raoul Genry. The baby's life was cut short when he was only 5 years old. She had to forget him in order not to go crazy and continue living. What if she could save him? Suddenly, our heroine will be able to change the future. For this, she first needs to learn everything about Haven Winter. But she has many problems. That is, not hers, but those around her. The first problem is that the Winter family is completely ruined. After a while, she asked where they got such huge debts from. The girl explained that it was necessary to pay bills to maintain the estate. The little one asked if they had any savings. When the maid explained that after the Baron's death the business gradually went into decline so that only she and Dino remained of the servants, the girl noted to herself that they both decided to serve the Winter family for the rest of their lives. With such a huge debt there is no hope. It seems that no one has thought about how to pay it back, so she said that they must sell the palace. Tefia exclaimed, "In what sense?" "But this is the last pride of the family, which has been passed down by inheritance for 80 years. Haven asked, "What to do then? Even if she pays off this debt with money from the inheritance, she still won't be able to pay the bills every month." The maid had tears in her eyes, and she objected that the Baron always repeated that this mansion must be preserved. Our heroine exclaimed that she was wrong. There was no need to cry, because she absolutely does not know how to comfort women. After which she ran up to her, began to wipe away her tears, and said that, okay, she would no longer talk about selling the estate. The girl immediately became happy and said that, in that case, she would try to find out how to save the house. The little girl replied that, okay, she would also try to find out something, but for that she needed to visit somewhere. Looking out from around the corner onto the busy street, the little girl thought to herself that she had barely managed to distract the knight. She could have gone alone, but he intended to accompany her. Haven, although she was a wandering mercenary, had some savings before her death. The guild gave her money for everyday expenses, and she also received a considerable fee for her services. Although, what good is this now? The little Winter doesn't have a penny to her name. She's even poorer than that kid with the lollipop. Then she sighed heavily and noted that for a 12-year-old girl this was too much debt. Then our heroine suddenly opened the doors of some house and asked if Grandma Tafa was alive. The woman was indignant that Ilian was a bad girl. Why had she been gone for so long? The little girl said that there had just been a lot of orders from the neighboring city lately. Grandma noted that her voice had changed, as if she had grown younger, even though she was blind, but she understood this. The little girl explained that she was just getting sick and had a slight chill. Grandma was surprised that there could be a cold in such weather, after which she asked if she wanted some tea and what had happened in general, since she usually doesn't just come over. Haven replied that she just came to check if she was alive or not, but in general it would be better if she told him about the key that she left, whether she remembered that she gave it to her. The woman immediately asked if she needed money because she could lend it. The little one objected. Where could she get money? No need. It would be better for her to replace these old cups. Why doesn't she use the dishes she bought her at all? The old woman stated that, judging by her grumbling, they really did need to be replaced, after which she reached for the key. Our heroine asked why it was so rusty. Tafa replied that he should be thankful that she hadn't thrown it away at all, although she was going to. After which she noted that her hands had become smaller. The girl objected that she seemed to have begun to suffer from senile dementia. How could they have become smaller? When the woman asked to let her touch her hands, Winter said that she had things to do, so it was time to go, and ran towards the door. The old woman shouted after her that she should not come again, as she was only making them worry, but the girl replied that she would always come to see her. Already outside the door, the little girl thought to herself that she simply couldn't tell her that in 3 years she would die. Thank her for everything. Then our heroine went to the bank, where she was asked if she had lost her mother, but she replied that she had come on business. She is from the estate of Baron Winter. She needs to check the safe. The little one knows that if you have the key, you can check it without confirming your identity. The girl noted that their bank really doesn't look at identity, but they do check ID, and she knows that in the Giraffe Empire, ID is issued to those over 15 years old. The girl replied that she knew she would ask, so she brought with her an ID card in the name of Baron Winter. Let him see. The name Haven is written on it. Therefore, let him show her the safe as soon as possible, because she has a lot of things to do. When the woman ran off somewhere, the little girl noted to herself that she had done the right thing by entrusting her money to a bank with such a weak security system. But the employee returned and suddenly reported that she had been told that they could not show the storage facility to a child under 15 years old. In the Giraffe Empire, persons under 15 years of age must come to the bank with a guardian. Our heroine immediately noted to herself that that terrible woman clearly would not listen to her. Perhaps ask a maid or a knight, although no, she won't be able to explain to them how she is connected to Ilian's personal storage. Suddenly, the girl ran off somewhere shouting why the gentleman hadn't warned her in advance what he had come for. The young man replied that he had come to check the Ilian Genri safe. The employee immediately said that she had prepared everything, and the storage rank could be selected in order. It was none other than Julius al-Rihart, who was now 15 years old. The guy said that he was choosing the sapphire rank. Could they go right now? The girl replied that of course they would quickly go down to the storage and check together. Our heroine was indignant why she couldn't do it with the key, but some passerby could do it without a key. The bank employee exclaimed that she should watch her language. This gentleman was quite a famous person. Haven stated that she doesn't care who he is. She has the key, so why can't she get through? The woman explained that he was not going to check the safe. The young man came here every year to raise his rank. Suddenly, the young man leaned towards her and said that he found it funny to hear that she had a key. The girl thought to herself that she was seeing those black pupils again. There was some kind of power in his eyes. They had known each other for 16 years, but this young duke always made her a little nervous. Suddenly, Julius asked if this was the key to Ilian Genri's safe or not. Our heroine muttered that it wasn't quite. After thinking for a while, the duke said that he wanted to buy it from her for 500 gold pieces. The bank employee was taken aback that they were offering so much money for some rusty piece of iron. When the young man added that he was ready to give 1,000 gold pieces, everyone around froze in surprise, because for this amount you could buy several buildings in the capital. The little girl thought to herself that this was a good amount, enough to persuade her, but she replied that it wouldn't work. When the guy started offering 2,000 and even 3,000 gold, our heroine grabbed her head and said that it wasn't about the money. The young man immediately gave orders to his knight to prepare a place for them, after which the man approached the girl and stated that she would be obliged to go with them. Already on the street, Haven shouted for him to wait for her, but to herself she thought that he had offered to talk, so where was he going so quickly? His knight asked for forgiveness, after which he took her in his arms in order to reach his destination faster. After some time, when they were already sitting at the table, the young man asked how much she needed. Baron Winter's business was closed after his death, and she either wants to pay off the debt or she needs money to maintain this decrepit house. Our heroine wondered if he had understood everything while they were walking. It was so similar to Julius. Noticing her smile, the young man asked why she was smiling. The little girl answered that he simply looked like her friend. She noted to herself that he was now 15 years old, and she was then 30 at about that time. At 30 years old, she worked for Duke Richard. It is rare for a mercenary to look after a famous family, but she agreed because of the decent salary. At that time, she didn't know that Julius was a duke, so sometimes she just called him Yuli, but she didn't really like the job, so eventually she left. After which she stated that, as she had already said, she did not need the money. The guy stated that she was not going to sell the key. The little one replied that, yes, she had thought to herself that if she sold it for 30 million gold, she would be able to solve her financial problems, but she couldn't just give it away. But suddenly, the young man said that she had better agree to the sale. To the question whether this was a threat, he answered that it was, since he was not going to give up the idea of getting him. The little one noted to herself that he was so quick to admit that he was threatening a 12-year-old girl, it was his style, and then asked why he needed the key. The Duke asked whether he should give a reason. The girl replied that she would not even think about whether to sell if there was no good reason. Julius replied that this thing belongs to Ilian Genri, that is the whole reason. Our heroine exclaimed that this wouldn't do, because she also needed something from this safe. When the little one said that she knew approximately what was there, the Duke immediately put a sword to her throat and asked what connected her with Ilian. The little girl began to try to find words and muttered that she was something like a friend to her. Of course, they are separated by 18 years, but is age really that important for friends? The young man immediately hid the sword, asked for forgiveness, and added that it looked like Genri. After which he asked if she had left this key with her herself. The little one answered that yes, before leaving. Haven said that she had one suggestion, because he was interested in knowing what was inside, and she, as he saw, was only 12 years old, and only those over 15 could check the safe. When the young man said that he would go with her, our heroine was delighted, grabbed his hand, and remembered that there was all sorts of trash and cigarette butts lying around inside. After which she said that she still could not give him what was there, but the Duke replied that it was enough for him to just look. The little girl was happy again and said that then they could consider that they had agreed, now they could go there. On the way, the employee told them not to move, otherwise the magic box might sink, and the knight asked why the miss chose such an old place. Our heroine explained that she had no money when she opened an account in this bank, after which she came to her senses and added that, more precisely, these were simply her guesses, nothing more. After some time, stopping near a huge door, the bank employee reported that they were there. When they went inside, our heroine immediately went to the safe to open it, after which she began to dig around in it to find what she needed and took out a bow. The Duke noted that Ilian Genry is a famous archer. It seems that she fell in love with shooting since childhood. Our heroine asked if someone could help her carry these bags of gold. While the girl was dragging them and saying that they were heavier than they seemed, the young man decided to see what else was there. After a short period of time, he took out from there a pendant on a chain with a green stone. When he pressed the stone, a hologram appeared from there, depicting a little girl with her parents. Haven noted that this is a family photo. She put it in the safe so that it does not get torn while she is doing tasks. Our heroine immediately ran towards him and shouted for him to immediately give her the medallion. The guy raised his hand and told her to sell it to him. The girl was indignant. How could she assess its value? But he replied that she had huge debts, or hoped to sell it when she was completely broke. The little one thought to herself who would sell a family photo, especially the only one, after which she said that Ilian would demand this photo from her when he returned. The young man objected that he would give it to her himself, but the girl insisted that it was she who had asked her. The servant noted to himself that it seemed that the gentleman really wanted to take this photograph because he was seeing Genry as a child for the first time. Julius asked if she was sure she could keep it safe until the girl returned. The little girl noted to herself that even if he gave her the medallion, he would still try to destroy it. Talking about money was nonsense. In fact, he was simply taking it away from her. After which she replied that she could take whatever she wanted, and the assistant immediately said that he would take care of this thing until he returned to the estate. But the young man replied that it was not necessary. Then he raised his hand and a magic circle appeared. Haven was surprised to herself that she had known Julius for 16 years and did not know that he could use magic. Then our heroine looked sadly at the broken cigarette that lay on the safe and noted that she could not even imagine that she would ever miss them so much. When she mechanically picked it up, the bank employee exclaimed who taught her to do this. The little girl realized that she hadn't even noticed how, out of habit, she had picked it up to light a cigarette. While the woman was shouting for her to immediately tell where her parents were, the Duke told Gaius to go. After some time, Haven thought about the fact that all that was in the safe was a little more than 20,000 gold. She had saved it, but that was all she had managed to collect. It would be difficult to get money elsewhere. After which she asked the maid how long they could last on that amount. Tafa replied that if you save a lot, then about 2 months, even if you postpone her and Sardino's salary, you still need to pay a lot for the upkeep of the house. After which she added that, as she had already said, she was only 12 years old, so they would handle the finances themselves. When the girl said that it was necessary to go into business, the girl exclaimed that she really wanted to do that again. Winter replied that the Baron had grown bonsai, and now she wanted to continue his work, but she thought to herself that even though she worked as a mercenary, she had loved flowers since childhood. When the assistant muttered that money was needed for this too, our heroine asked if she didn't believe in her or what. Tafa replied that she was only 12 years old. She was not obliged to earn money. She and the knight would somehow try to solve this problem. The little one noted to herself that she shouldn't worry. Her parents died when she was 10 years old, so she worked everywhere. Suddenly, a young man burst into the room and told Winter that a letter had arrived from the Seran estate. It was written in it that if she did not want to fail her debut in high society, then she should come to her right now and get on her knees if she admitted her guilt. After which, she said that she was somehow annoying. Did she have to do this? What business did she have with high society? The girl replied that in 3 years she would have to make her debut in high society, and if she did not move in social circles, the Baron's family would go bankrupt and disappear. The little girl thought that her aunt probably thought that for this reason she would bow her head before her when she turned 15. This estate, which is already 80 years old, is worth paying off the debts for it with the help of her father's business, but Rosanna, who has designs on it, is in no hurry to pay. Therefore, the little one replied that it would be in 3 years anyway, and then she would think about it. If he worries about it now, he will only get into trouble, won't he? In that case, from today on, he will start to act decisively. When asked where she was going, Haven replied that she was going to earn money since she was now the head of the family, but it was already late, so she would leave tomorrow morning. The next day, preparations for the garden began, and our heroine took an active part in this. The boy thought to himself that Haven said that she would go earn money and went here, to the bonsai garden. He wondered what a 12-year-old girl needed in such a place. Some time ago, he thought that she had been just looking for an hour. Why did she even come here? Suddenly, a man's voice was heard saying that he could not understand where his scissors had gone. Having picked them up from the ground, Haven ran towards him asking if this was what he was looking for. When the gardener asked who she was, an aristocrat it seemed, the girl replied that he could address her as you. Did the situation make sense? That's how she followed the garden workers and helped with the work, called the men, who looked over 30 years old, older brothers, and that's how she became friends. The man said that he had a lot of work, and her little cat hands were very helpful. The girl laughed and replied that if she had cat hands, then that meant she had to clean up the dog's feet. Seeing that the little girl was holding many branches, the knight wanted to help her, but Haven said that she could handle it perfectly well herself. After some time, the man said that they had all worked well today. They now have many orders from high-ranking dignitaries, so they will have to sweat for a few more days. The gardener noted that they would soon have a lot of free time, wouldn't they? The little girl replied that how could she know, since she had spent the whole day running after him like a little tail. The guy noted that she speaks so funny. Is she really 12 years old? Even 30-year-old Alice can't speak like she does. Suddenly, the foreman said that he would treat her to a tasty drink in the cafe today. Dino was indignant to himself that Haven had been sweating all day today, and he wanted to pay her off with some kind of treat at the cafe. The little girl noticed that he was angry, so she stood in front of the young man, as if showing that there was no need to do anything. The gardener said that since she had done a lot today, he wanted to get away with some kind of drink. The boss muttered that okay, maybe she would help them from tomorrow. After which he said that they had a lot of work lately. If she did well, he would even pay her. The little girl asked, "Is that possible?" In general, she had already even made friends with everyone. The foreman picked her up in his arms, started spinning her around and exclaiming how interesting she was. If only his son were like her. If he can't study normally, at least he had a good character. Haven said that this should be passed on from his father, shouldn't it? The knight could not understand what was happening. Before the miss lost her memory, she was so timid that she could not even give orders. When everyone started to leave, the boy asked how she knew how to trim branches. The girl answered that she had seen it several times in a book and had watched others while walking around the garden in the morning. Dina wondered if that was all, and grafting, layering, and other terms, and she also knew what the instruments were called. Our heroine answered in confusion that at first she only listened, and then she simply understood what was what. It dawned on the knight why she had just stood there and stared when they had first arrived. He had thought she was just looking around. Garrick was the oldest and easiest to befriend in the garden, so he stepped in when the head gardener offered to buy Haven a drink and send her home empty-handed, which she could tell. When they returned home, the little girl said that they needed to take a bath and also that she should prepare dinner for them. The young man noted to himself that it was as if his father had come home after a day of work. Dino thought that Miss would stop going to the garden and abandon this work after a few days because she was still very young and the gardeners did not expect anything special from her. However, she has been working here for a whole month already, naturally, and the young man is with her. The gardener asked her what she thought she would have for lunch today. The girl replied that the elder said that she wanted something starchy, maybe noodles. After the boys muttered that they were already tired of noodles, the little girl exclaimed that she would then ask about bread. They were supposed to like sandwiches. When she ran into his office, the foreman said that it was good that Haven had come, because he was just about to give her this. The little one asked if it was a sandwich by any chance, because she really wanted one. But the man replied that no, but he could offer it for lunch. It was her salary for the month because the little girl had worked hard. Winter replied that the gardeners do it and she just helps. But why are there 2 envelopes? The man replied that the second was for her faithful knight, because his work also had to be paid for. Our heroine exclaimed that he would be very grateful. Thank him for that. After a while, the little one noted to herself that she had earned 1,200 gold, and Dino, 1,000 gold can be enough for a month for one person. After all, they do not work officially, so they paid a lot. After which she said that since they received their salaries, they could buy meat for Tafa today. What does he think about this? The young man exclaimed that this was a great idea. The maid said that they sold delicious meat in that direction. The little one noticed that the gardener Alec was standing nearby. He looked extremely thoughtful, so it was interesting to see what was going on in his head. So I ran up to him and asked if he had come here to buy groceries for dinner. The guy replied that he wanted to buy apples. Pointing to the red ones, the girl said that they taste better at the back because this aunt always puts the fresh ones further away. After some time, when it was already getting dark, our heroine said that they needed to go in the opposite direction. The gardener ran up to her and thanked her for helping him choose the apples. The girl was surprised. What was wrong with that? Was that really why he called her? The young man replied that, no, to be honest, if she didn't mind, he had one request. The next day, the young man ran after her and shouted that this was simply unthinkable, so he would not allow her to do it. What does it mean? She is going to work in the house of aristocrats. In no case, if the maid finds out about this, she will not leave so easily. The little girl looked at him carefully and asked how much they had to pay in bills for this month. The knight quietly answered that it was 8,000, and when asked how much they had earned last month, he answered that it was 2,000 gold. The little one continued that if things went on like this, they would go broke, but pride could be preserved even after they earned money. The young man objected that he would go himself then, but she didn't need to work there. Haven thought to herself that he had been following her since yesterday, when Alec approached her with a request. The guy asked her to replace him at work in the garden, and also at the Duke Riart estate. It is very difficult to get work in this estate. The name of the Riart family is even on the national flag, which is kept in the imperial palace. The emperor who was chosen by the Black Dragon founded the Giraffe Empire and then named this dragon Duke Riart. It was impossible to verify whether this was true or not, since several hundred years had already passed, but this family still exists today and has such enormous power that it can even change laws. Such a great family, and she, the daughter of a baron, if she works in the Duke's estate, it is clear that this will leave a long-lasting, shameful mark on her dynasty. So she could understand Dino's concerns, but asked if he could handle the job if he went instead of her. The young man replied that Alice said that he did not have any special hopes. The little girl interrupted him and said that was right. How much longer did he think they would work in the divert garden? There will be enough work in the garden until June, while the trees are blooming. But what will happen in October, when the leaves fall? What if their work ends and there are no more orders? How does a young man think who will be fired first? Of course, him and her. Dino noted to himself that she didn't act like a 12-year-old, so at first he thought that Haven was just a little older than her age, but seeing how she perceives reality, she seems older than even him, who is 22. The little one stated that all this meant that they simply needed work, so it was time to go. The knight thought to himself that she was only 12, so why did she look so reliable? The Winter couple died in an accident, after which the servants left the estate. Since the future of the family was doomed, looking at them, he and Tafa thought a lot about whether they, who had barely reached the age of 20, should stay here. However, they could not leave, since it was the Baron who had once helped his poor family. And his dear wife bought medicine when it was very necessary for the girl's sick mother. So they both decided to continue serving Miss Haven, but the future seemed bleak. His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the little one, who grabbed his hand and exclaimed that it was enough to sulk. So what? They had scolded him a little, but he had already become weak. After a while, the guy asked if she wasn't heading to the Duke's estate, so why did she come to the brewery? The guy shouted after her that she was only 12, so she couldn't go in there. The seller, hearing that the doors had opened, asked if they were looking for something. The young man immediately said that they did not need anything, but the girl objected that she would like to see the pink wine, preferably not too expensive and prepared using the blending method. Taking out one of the bottles, the man asked her how she liked it since it was quite famous. Our heroine replied that it was too young. It needed at least 5 years of aging. Let him give Roblen, which was nearby. When they went outside, the knight asked where she learned to understand wines. Haven answered that she did not study, she just ran to the cellar, which was in the basement of their house, as a child. Dino didn't even have time to react, as the little girl shoved wine into his hands and ran screaming that the estate was already visible ahead. Near the gate, the guard exclaimed menacingly that this was not their playground, so they should get out of here right now. Our heroine grinned sarcastically and replied that he would regret his words. When Uncle Fred approached them, the little girl greeted him and said that she would help carry the things. While the man was thinking about the fact that he was seeing her for the first time, our heroine said that she had come on an errand from the Divert Garden. When Fred asked what the errand was, Haven exclaimed that she had accidentally found wine there and that the bottles might cause problems. After she added that it was necessary to report everything to the butler Spencer, the man began to run after her and shout for her to wait. Snatching the bottle from her hands, he asked where the girl got it. Our heroine stated that one bottle was not enough, wasn't it? In fact, she bought it. When she added that she had bought it at the Divert Garden, the man was surprised, since when they had been making wine there. Then he thought that May is the busiest month for gardeners. If they came to him, the only gardener of the Riard estate, with this wine, then it means something. After which he exclaimed, "Is Divert really asking to entrust the work in the garden to them? It won't work. He will find this winery himself." Haven replied that it was a pity, but nothing could be done. She would go and tell the butler about the winery where Ronblan wine was made. The man sighed heavily and realized that he was left with no other choice. After some time, Spencer was already asking whether he really wanted to entrust the gardening work to the Divert workers. The man replied that it was true, since gardening was his duty, but the butler objected that in fact Vincent's gardeners did it every year. Winter thought to herself that the reason he didn't like them was obvious. He didn't trust Fred with a bottle of wine in his hands, nor the little girl who was eager to work there. After which, she began to run towards the butler and shout that her name was Haven. The man replied that he was very pleased, but still it was somehow awkward to break off all relations with the Vincent garden without any reason. The knight noted to himself that after the accident she had become very friendly, but this was the first time he had seen the girl fawn like that. Our heroine thought to herself that sucking up at 40 years old is a bit of a blow to one's pride, but one must be able to bend over backwards. Spencer had a weakness for everything cute, especially children. He began working for Riard in his youth and did not marry until he was 60, but when he met the children of other servants, he was ready to give everything. Therefore, the little girl decided to take advantage of this feature. Now she needs to finish what she started. After which, lowering her head, she sadly said that her parents died early and she had no one to rely on at all. Sir Dino agreed to raise her, but they need money, so they barely managed to get a job at Divert's kindergarten. If they can't get this job, they will be thrown out on the street and will only be left to beg. Spencer immediately hugged her tightly and said that she could work here. He imagines how difficult it was for her to lose her parents at such a young age, so he would like to help her. Our heroine immediately amused herself and exclaimed that this was excellent, then she would come tomorrow at the same time with the contract. On the way, the young man asked her how she had guessed about such a slightly strange method of conquest, so to speak. The little one noted to herself that he was asking how she knew that Fred loved both Roblen and Spencer children, but she answered out loud that it was just a coincidence. She bought the rose wine because it was cheap, and butlers usually like cute little children because they remind them of their grandchildren. After which, she added that she needed to return home quickly because she wanted to wash up and go to bed, while the guy thought to himself how amazing she was. After some time, the man exclaimed how she managed to do it. It was simply unthinkable because aristocrats are so strict. Once they have chosen gardeners, they never change them. Our heroine replied that she simply said that very loyal and good people work in the Divert garden. Then they began to throw it up and exclaim, "Where did such a blessing come from in their garden?" After which the gardener coughed and asked the chief how about accepting Haven officially into their ranks. She copes well with assignments, helps with tools, and even provided them with an order. He believes that she can be accepted into their family, although the girl has only worked for a month. When the man tried to object that she still didn't know how to work properly, the guy interrupted him and said that they could teach her because there were so many skilled workers around. Others supported him and said that, true, if the crumbs go to others, it will be a real loss for them. Garrick says sensible things. The foreman had no choice but to ruffle the little girl's hair and say that she was now part of their family. The next day, Winter, upon seeing the butler, immediately grabbed his leg and exclaimed that she missed her grandfather. Spencer thought to himself that before children were scared and cried when they saw his wrinkled face, but now they call him Grandpa. The little one came to her senses and asked for forgiveness, since you can't call everyone Grandpa, but the man objected that it was okay. She could call him that as much as she wanted. The little girl grinned imperceptibly and thought to herself that she had completely won his heart. Then the man first yelled at the guys, asking why they were standing there, why the contract hadn't been signed yet, and then he smiled sweetly and told the little girl that he would prepare some bread for her before leaving, so she shouldn't forget to take it. After a while, Fred said that since they were at the Ryard estate, all gardening work would be carried out under his supervision. The owner pays special attention to the garden, so if they acted willfully, he would fire them immediately. Watching this picture, the knight asked if she would help them, but the girl had been working with them for a whole month. It was a pity to see them being scolded. Haven replied that this is how bosses should behave. Some tension helps to work well, and besides, if Divert's gardeners make a mistake, then she will also be at a disadvantage. Dino noted to himself that just this morning she was so happy to become a member of their family, and now she was acting so cold. The new leader shouted that it was now time to get to work, so let them follow him. Winter thought to herself that they were a little down at the moment, but in a few days they would be friends. As far as she remembered, Fred only had to have one drink with someone and he became a friend for life. She had only worked at the Ryard estate for a month, but that was enough to remember the names, ages, and even family connections of all the workers, and the person who first made her think that she was not friendly enough was Gaius. The guy approached her and stated that they met again. The girl muttered that, yes. The young man noted that he did not know that she worked in the Divert garden. Our heroine replied that she had recently arrived there. Haven had always found it easy to communicate with those younger than her, but she always felt some kind of barrier when communicating with this young man. And it is absolutely not surprising that she felt this, since before he really did not love her. After which she stated that if he had nothing more to say, then she had to go. Gaius asked where she was going. The little one answered that Mr. Spencer told her to take the bread. Suddenly the guy picked her up in his arms and exclaimed that she hardly knew where the kitchen was, so he would show her the way. The young man began to run after him and say that he himself could carry her in his arms. But the knight objected that since he had already taken it, he would carry it. So what difference did it make anyway? The little one began to remember how in her past life she introduced herself to the young man and asked if he was Julius's assistant. The young man interrupted her and told her to call him Mr. Julius. When the girl said that it was her mistake, Mr. Gaius, Mr. Julius's assistant, the young man simply turned around silently and started to leave. Our heroine noted to herself that when the boss is called by any name, the mood can get worse. That's what she thought at first, but it turned out that wasn't the case. They worked together, there was no point in being hostile to him, so she tried to get closer to him several times, but the guy refused each time. Ilian heard the maids say that Mr. Gaius is so caring, always helps to carry things, just a great man, young, and already they are talking about a wedding, how lucky his future wife will be. From all these conversations, she understood that the young man disliked her for no reason, after which she decided that there was no point in her being friends with him either, so they simply ignored each other. This continued until the very last night before she left for the war, when the guy suddenly appeared on her doorstep and asked if she really had to go there. The young man asks her just once, "Please, don't go anywhere." When the girl asked why he was acting so strangely, the guy stood up and apologized for disturbing her at such a late hour. He looked so desperate. It's hard to even imagine that he hadn't liked her for a whole year. She couldn't stop him and just watched him go. The thoughts were interrupted by a voice that said that there was a kitchen there. The head cook's name was Sarah, but she was not there now. The little girl said that they could wait themselves and let him go. When the guy tried to object that it was still not right to leave guests, she said that it would soon be 12. The young man immediately looked at his watch and replied that, okay then, they would see each other next time. After he left, the knight immediately asked when they had already met. Haven answered that she had met by chance when she went for savings. She thought to herself that last time she had lied, that she had savings in the amount of 20,000 gold. How could he believe her? When asked if something had happened between them, the girl replied that no, she simply felt some kind of dislike towards him. Then she thought that Dino looked simple, but she noticed that he was quite observant. The young man asked if they could take these apples, and the little girl replied that yes, they had just been picked and they were very tasty. When a girl started running towards them, our heroine said that her name was Haven Winter, and from today on she would be working with the Dybert gardeners. The cook happily stated that it turned out that the butler had asked to bake bread especially for her. This is rye bread, but if I had known that she was so young, I would have made something else. The little girl took the basket in her hands and said that it was okay because she made the best rye bread. Sarah exclaimed, "How does Haven know that she is doing this? Is it really that obvious on her?" The baby replied that, yes, the smell from it is simply amazing. After some time, the children noted that all the bread she brought was very tasty, and the water was like juice. Then Jarek ruffled her hair and said thank you, but when our heroine objected that she just brought it, the young man asked if she was too old, since she spoke like an old woman. If something suddenly happens and he can't help her, let him ask other adults for help. Let him remember this. The little girl replied that even if nothing happens, she will still come to his house. She is interested in looking at Eric. This boy is a 15-year-old son of a gardener. According to his father, he had no interest in studying and was a very impudent youth. The man smiled happily and said that, okay, let him definitely come by sometime. We'll have dinner together. I thought to myself that I wasn't really planning to go to his house. I was just keeping up the conversation. She had many acquaintances with whom she was not particularly close. Ilian wandered all her life, so she did not see anything good in close communication. The mercenary easily got along with people, but did not let anyone get close. If her guild comrades heard her words, they would be upset. It was convenient for her to live without friends and enemies. Surely they themselves understood her boundaries in relationships with others. After which she said that it seemed that everyone was short of water, so she would bring it, and the knight immediately exclaimed that he would go with her. Our heroine replied that there was no need, let him eat, because it was not far from here. On the way, she heard a conversation between the Duke and his assistant, who said that she was fine. Julius said to send more carts with things to the Principality of Sidr. The guy tried to calm him down, that this war would not last long. Haven noted that this was most likely the same war she went to 10 years ago, the first time she heard of Julius interfering in the course of the war. The young man asked how long he had not slept at all. He needed to sleep a little. He would bring the medicine now. Suddenly our heroine was burned, and the Duke told her to come out already. Stop hiding there and eavesdropping. The little one noted to herself that she had not hidden on purpose, but it turned out as if she had been caught off guard. After which she looked out from behind the pole and exclaimed that she had absolutely no intention of eavesdropping. It's just that on the side where the young people are talking, there is water. His lordship immediately told Gaius that he could go now, and the assistant said that he would just get everything ready. On the way, the young man thought that the gentleman was very cold with others, so he hoped that everything would be okay with the little miss. The girl thought to herself that he really couldn't sleep. He looked a little tired. Suddenly, a memory appeared in his head of how she told him that there was something more important to her than money. The Duke asked him to clarify what exactly it was. When the woman tried to touch his head with her hand, the young man sharply pushed her away. She always had a soft spot for him. Ilian always got out of other situations with ease, but Julius was an exception. Jenry met him when she was 24 and he was 9. Then she gave in to him in everything. She usually did not stay in one place longer than 6 months, but at the Rehart estate she stayed for a whole year, tried to leave several times, but could not. It was all because of this 15-year-old boy, but she couldn't even hold his hand, because she wouldn't be able to be with him for the rest of her life. When the little girl asked if he was sleeping badly, the guy asked why she was asking him. Let him ask Ilian. The little one noted to herself that he had such a face as if he didn't want her to ask, after which she said that she simply couldn't contact a man at war. 10 years ago she went to war for only a month, and she was haunted by the fact that Julius had insomnia because of her. But the woman could not lie, because she should not give him reason to hope for anything. Haven noted to herself that she herself had gone to war, and now she was worried. It felt like she was guilty of something. After which she said that she was just worried, because she had just heard that he couldn't sleep. Suddenly, the young man hissed at her to leave him alone. When she saw the Duke's cold gaze, she realized that she was truly no longer Ilian Genry. She had to admit the fact that Julius was not the same young man who had looked at her with hope in his eyes before. When she was walking back, Garrick said that they were going to have a drink with Fred. Would she go with them? The girl asked if he was offering her to sit and drink orange juice. She didn't want to, because she still had things to do. The man was surprised how it turned out that she had more things to do than they did. When he added that she should not overdo it, the little girl thought that about 2 weeks had passed and she had become very friendly with them. While she was thinking about this, suddenly the chef, who was dragging some kind of bag, called out to her and asked what she was doing. Our heroine replied that she was thinking about what to eat for lunch tomorrow. Everyone was saying that they were already tired of the food from the nearby establishments. The chef realized that the Rehard estate does not feed invited workers lunch. It really is not easy for her. At her age, it would be good to run and play. Her nephew does only that. Haven thought to herself that although she was answering her, she could not concentrate on the conversation. The reason for the Duke's insomnia is definitely in her, but 10 years ago she heard nothing about it, even through Julius's letters to her. The girl's thoughts were interrupted by her phrase that, therefore, she had prepared dishes that help with insomnia, but they were of no use. And now he is thinking about preparing not food but tea. There are many different varieties that are useful for those who have problems with sleep. They say that it helps many get rid of the disease. But none of the servants want to carry out the orders. They say that in the evening the Duke is even more terrible. She can understand them. Even to her, he seems a little unusual for a 15-year-old teenager. Then she realized that she herself had not noticed how she had almost spoken ill of his lordship. When Winter asked if there was anything she could do to help, the girl asked what she was talking about. Our heroine looked at her confidently and replied that she would take tea to the Duke every evening. After some time, when Tafa said in surprise that she seemed to have not quite heard, Haven repeated that she would now take tea to Julius. Suddenly, the maid lost her temper and shouted that she would not allow her to do this. How could she serve the Duke? It was impossible under no circumstances. A girl cannot serve him. That should be done by people of low birth like her, not by ladies like Miss Winter. The little one could not understand why the assistant was so angry, although she already felt guilty that the girl went to work in the garden for money, and now she was also going to serve the Duke. A little earlier, the butler was surprised that the little girl would take the tea, since most of the servants refused to do this, and put it off until the last minute every evening. Then they looked at our heroine at the same time and thought that perhaps she would be the one to cope with this task. So they talked a little. The guys immediately agreed and signed a contract, which stated that in case of successful resolution of insomnia, they undertake to pay the appropriate reward. Suddenly, a knight approached her and said that he begged her very much. The master's insomnia must be cured. The little one noted to herself that he had exactly the same look when he came to her at night and asked her not to go to war. Then she realized that everyone who worked in the estate really valued Julius. Be that as it may, the matter was easily resolved, thanks to the servants' reluctance to perform this duty, and the friendliness of the former Ilian also played into her hands. Tafa thought to herself that he was not even the emperor's grandson, but some kind of duke, and suddenly serving him would hurt the young soul of the miss. The girl immediately began to ask her to stop crying because she absolutely does not know how to calm people down, and the maid added that she was wrong to stop her from selling the estate, but the little girl objected that a daughter is obliged to fulfill her father's last will. I thought to myself that, of course, it would be nice to sell this house, but then Miss Seran would want to get her hands on the money. She could have resisted her, but the problem was that she was only 12 years old, and since she didn't know how the future would turn out, it would be better for her to seem like an ordinary little girl to everyone. Who knows, perhaps the Duke's family had more power than the imperial palace, where only people with the status of count could serve. Power, glory, strength, his family had all this, but behaved rather quietly. This allowed the members of the imperial family to feel more confident, but at the same time, the Riards maintained a sense of mystery. A couple of years ago, there had been changes. Workers received their positions by inheritance, and new servants were hired only after an interview. It was not for nothing that this place was called an impregnable fortress. Some said that it was more difficult to get a job there than the imperial palace, after which she replied that if everything worked out, she might leave her job in the garden. The butler personally hired her. Then she took the maid by the face, looked into her eyes, and asked her not to worry. She replied that it was okay. The work began quite quickly. In order to solve the problem with insomnia, she packed her things for a few days and came to the Duke's estate. She thought to herself that the house was strictly guarded, so Dino was not allowed to stay with her, but he was not too worried because he came every day to help as a gardener. Sarah asked if she could handle it because she was probably scared too. In the evenings, the gentleman was not the same as during the day. They still can't get used to it because during the day he behaves very friendly. The girl thought maybe he was just not interested because Yuli had never really paid attention to anything related to work in the palace. After which she took the tray and said that she would go and take the tea, and the guys exclaimed that they would root for her. Standing in front of the door, Haven noted that he was still sitting in his office. No wonder Spencer was worried that he would sit up all night working. Then she decided to put the tray on the floor. Since it would be inconvenient to open the doors with it, the other servants would be shocked if they saw it. After which she knocked on the door, said that she had brought tea, and asked if he could come in. But there was no answer. Our heroine noted that he must have heard. Was he really ignoring her? Was he really hoping that Haven would just leave? Therefore, she decided to come in without permission, saying that she brought tea. Without raising his head, the young man told her to leave here. When she tried again to say that Miss Sira had asked her to pass him the tea, the guy repeated again that she should go away and reminded her that he had already said this twice. Our heroine thought to herself that he was so cold, maybe she should try to approach him quietly. Then she put the tray on his table and said that she heard that he had not been able to sleep for several weeks, and this tea would help him overcome insomnia. The guy reached for the cup, and Haven already thought that he decided to drink it, but the young man simply knocked the tea off the table. Then the young man added that she should leave him alone and again buried his face in his papers. Winter can't say that she observed him much, but when she first met him, she didn't notice such traits in his character. He was simply silent and a little cold, but he didn't often show himself in this way in front of her, and only now did she realize that it was towards her that Julius treated her differently. When our heroine returned very dejected, the Duke's assistant said that if she was having a hard time, she could refuse this job. The girl exclaimed that, although she was small, she was the head of the family. At home, a knight who looked like a bear and a servant who resembled a rabbit were waiting for her. She thought to herself that she couldn't allow herself to give up because of something like this, so she would do everything to put the gentleman to bed. The next day, she thought about how Ilian Genri, if she had given up after every failure, would not have been able to work as a mercenary for 20 years. She was known for never stopping halfway. So she grabbed the tray again and ran towards the young man's office. The chef noted to herself that she had been cheerful yesterday, but still looked upset, so she thought the little one had given up. But Haven was still as cheerful as ever. Let her hang in there. Standing in front of the huge doors, the girl thought to herself that she shouldn't get too close, because it would only make things worse. It is necessary to keep a distance. If he comes every day, then sooner or later he will drink tea. So a whole week passed. Our heroine silently came to him, left tea and left, but when she came on the 7th day, the door was locked. Winter noted to herself that when he broke the cup, she did not become angry, but now excitement flared up in her. If only out of respect for Gaius, Sarah, and Spencer, who were so eagerly awaiting good results every night, she cannot give up. After which our heroine decided that in such a case, she would take drastic measures. Just as Julius has a special relationship with Ilian, she also had warm, friendly feelings for him, but that is now in the past. Suddenly, she remembered the day she first saw him. She was 24 years old, wandering without a permanent home. A woman accidentally found an order and came to the capital of the Giraffe Empire, rented a modest overnight stay and tried to sleep. That night she heard a faint sound. It was some kind of hesitant knock on the door, but she had no acquaintances who could show up at such a time. Seeing a little boy in front of her, Genri said that he had the wrong door, but the baby looked into her eyes and quietly whispered for her to hide him. The thought flashed through our heroine's head that he looked like an angel, but he didn't want to interfere in other people's affairs. But after thinking a little, she decided to let him in anyway, and she noted to herself that he heard the approaching steps of his pursuers, but did not even move. It was obvious that he was used to hiding. The baby already knew what needed to be done, so he went straight to the closet, but the girl told him to wait a little. When there was a knock at the door, Ilian lit a cigarette and asked if they had been taught that it was impolite to break into someone else's house in the middle of the night. The guys asked if she had seen a boy with black hair. Genri replied that she had seen him. About 10 minutes ago, he ran into another alley. This house has big windows, so everything is visible. One of the men exclaimed, "Is she lying? It would be necessary to check that closet once and search the house in general." When she showed that only her things were inside, the guys started asking for forgiveness, as they were sure that he had run in there. After they left, our heroine stood near the chest of drawers and told him to go out already. This is exactly what their first meeting with the young man was like. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking about the fact that he hadn't been able to sleep for more than 2 months. He assumed that he might have insomnia after Ilian's departure, but not to that extent. Julius didn't need protection, but he had good reasons to hire people for 24-hour security. Genri didn't know this, but the guy began to spend more and more time with her after he hired her. At first it was 6 o'clock, then at 8, 12, he put a lot of pressure on those who came to work instead of Genri, and they ran away. However, the more time they spent together, the more anxiously the young man stopped. At first he was unable to fall into a deep sleep, and then insomnia appeared altogether. Although the Duke had not slept soundly every night before, sometimes he felt the presence of Ilian, who came to check on him, and then he would not sleep all night, lying with his eyes open. But still, the young man regained his calm. He changed a lot when the girl was not around. But of course, this was not the only reason for his insomnia. Gaius reported every 2 hours on the state of affairs of the mercenary. This continued for a year, and then she disappeared. After she left for the war, he was afraid of hearing news of her death one day. Even reports every 30 minutes did not help. The guy himself didn't know how it happened that he became so attached to her, but he knew one thing for sure. If he stopped hearing news about her, he could die. Suddenly, the butler appeared and asked worriedly if he was going to spend the night in the study. Even if he couldn't sleep, it would still be better to go to the bedroom. When Spencer added that he thought it would be better to lie down on the bed, Julius interrupted him and hissed that he had not given him such a right. Let him go. After that, he noted that tea time had already passed, which meant that this girl had finally given in. What a weak-willed woman she was. But suddenly, the young man heard a loud knock on the window. Turning around, he saw a small palm, and Haven's voice announced that it was time to drink tea. When the young man opened the window, our heroine appeared and greeted the gentleman. A little earlier, the guy was thinking that usually girls her age often cry, but she doesn't. Not only does she not think about getting upset, she also cleans up the broken dishes. It seems that the little girl understood that she shouldn't come close, so she began to leave the tray on the floor and immediately leave. Today, it has been a week since she has been bringing him tea. He thought that the little girl would quickly give in and stop coming, receiving a refusal every time. Now he was thinking about the fact that he wanted to ask if there would be tea today, but instead he simply drove Spencer away, and after all, he himself told her to leave and even locked the door. It's not that he's interested in why they're not bringing tea. He's learned that a girl has appeared in the garden a few weeks ago, running around here and there, and besides, the guy has already encountered her once. This is the same little girl who had Ilian's key. It's unclear why she left her key to some kid. It was strange, but they had a lot in common. For example, the fact that in a month she managed to make friends with all the servants. Sometimes the girl was too annoying, but never crossed a certain line. Haven, finally she gave in. The young man, of course, was glad that he managed to get rid of the annoying little girl, but inside there was a strange feeling. Now the little one was hanging on the window and saying that, of course, she hadn't brought tea today, but could he give her his hand if he fell? He would be killed. The young man noted to himself that he thought it was the killer, but then he wouldn't have knocked on the window, but it turned out to be Haven, after which he stated that she knew about it and still climbed to the 5th floor. Our heroine replied that he had closed the door himself, so he should better give her his hand, otherwise she would soon be unable to bear it and would fall. Grabbing the little girl by the hands, the young man asked how she managed to get here at all. Winter replied that she wasn't crazy enough to climb to the 5th floor, so she climbed from the 4th. Julius objected that his bedroom was actually there, but she replied that it didn't matter, he wasn't there anyway. In fact, she simply went straight ahead. It was good that her persistence worked. Since he didn't open the door, then she could enter through the window. Then she added that there was a lot of stucco on the walls of the castle, so she was able to climb up, although it was a bit dangerous because other night guests could get in there. Unexpectedly, the young man asked several times who she was. The little girl replied that she was the head of the family and that she had a knight who looked like a bear and a maid who resembled a rabbit. The guy noted to himself that this habit of scratching his cheek and other little things are very reminiscent of Ilian. It irritates him. The little girl said, "Is it really so difficult to just drink a cup of tea?" Although her task is not to give him tea, but to rid him of insomnia, the young man asked why he should drink this tea. The girl answered that in order to solve the problem with sleep. It suddenly dawned on our heroine that he seemed to not want to get rid of this problem. In fact, Haven was right. He didn't really try to get rid of the illness. Perhaps he hoped that Genri would want to know about it, because she would be beside herself if she found out that a 15-year-old boy couldn't sleep because of her. After which he asked if it had anything to do with her. The girl exclaimed if he knew how much Mr. Spencer, Chef Sarah, and Mr. Gaius were worried about him. When he asked her why she thought the guy should know that, our heroine thought to herself that she didn't know that Julius had such a difficult character. After which she said, "Okay, they will put this question aside. Is it true that he doesn't want to sleep? Because of this he walks around with a headache all day, isn't that right?" The Duke noted to himself that he was indeed not trying to get rid of his insomnia, but he could not say that he was deliberately forcing himself to stay awake all night. The gentleman himself would like to fall asleep if he could. That is the pure truth. Winter said that it was good that he spoke honestly, then let him help her, and she would help get rid of the illness. The Duke immediately asked how. Haven to himself that he said it rather coldly, but for Julius it is quite a polite answer. Then she said that first it was necessary to go to the bedroom. They say that to catch a tiger, you need to go to his den. Thinking that perhaps she was right, the boy headed to his room, but the girl stopped him and said that he needed to go down through the window. The Duke asked in surprise why he had to go down through the window instead of the stairs. Our heroine explained that physical activity is necessary for a good night's sleep. Didn't he know? Richard noted to himself that even several hours of continuous running were not physical activity for him. After which he added that he didn't say that he wanted to do physical exercises, but the little girl didn't listen to him and chattered that he should come out quickly, but that he should be careful because he could hit himself, so he should keep his head down. The young man noted to himself that for the first time in 15 years of living in the castle, he looked out in this way, and for the first time he felt freedom. Haven told him to grab onto this eagle and then move towards the protruding rock. She thought to herself that she didn't understand why he was silent. Was he really scared? Was he really that timid? By the way, before stepping over the window, he stopped. Maybe he got scared. She, of course, cannot bear his weight, but she can at least take his hand, after which she asked if he wants it. But suddenly the Duke waved his hand to the side and a staircase began to appear in the air. Our heroine was at first confused, but then exclaimed that she could have immediately said that he could do that. The guy retorted that she really thought that he would, like a fool, climb down, grabbing onto bricks. The little girl noted to herself that it wasn't a matter of fear, he simply had no words for such a stupid proposal. Once on the balcony, the young man asked what he should do next. Just lie down in bed. The little one asked if he would be able to fall asleep if he lay down in bed. It wouldn't work anyway. It would be better to build something like a nightstand right here. When the boy created a chest of drawers using magic, the girl sat on it and told him to do the same. Sitting down next to her, the Duke did not understand why he did everything this little brat said. Our heroine looked at the sky and said with admiration how bright the moon was today. It was a hot day, so hot that the other workers were constantly irritated, which is understandable because they spent the whole day in the sun. Her throat was dry, and her entire mouth was covered in sand. There was not a drop of water around, no matter how much she spit, and the sand continued to irritate her tongue. So she spent almost half a day under the sun, enduring the heat with all her might. Everyone who was with her cursed with the last words, and then left. On the way home she looked at the sky and thought, "What a damn bright moon." When asked what this word had to do with it, the little one exclaimed that it was quite appropriate. She had only been spitting sand all day, and the noble moon was rising in the sky. If it were up to her, she would smash it to pieces so that it would fall down. Therefore, if he doesn't like something, then let him at least scold the moon. She's not in the mood, and this moon is so bright today. At some point, the guy thought that Ilian had returned. He couldn't even answer anything. The girl's voice interrupted his thoughts and said that it was okay with that, after which she suggested that they address each other as you. The young man asked why he should agree. Haven was indignant that he kept asking why and what for. She had promised to help him get rid of his insomnia, and the price for that could be to address him informally. Julius objected that she had probably signed a contract for a reward if she solved his problem. Winter asked what caused the insomnia. The Duke replied that it didn't really bother him. The little girl stated that it didn't seem like he was willing to cooperate. The girl asked when he met Mr. Gaius. The guy answered that it was 5 years ago. She asked how exactly. He answered that he personally hired him. The little girl stated that this meant he was doing a great job, but Julius replied that no. 5 years ago, he was a 20-year-old youth. He was beaten by some old man in a gateway. Then it turned out that it was his father. He was passing by. It infuriated him, so he got rid of him. When Julius finished, he was about to go further, but Gaius asked him to take him with him, so he hired a guy. Haven noted to herself that it was now clear rumors had been circulating for a long time about the unlucky father of the Wren family. Surely the Duke who freed him from his cruel father seemed like a god to him. The young man was very unlucky that he met such a terrible boss, but out loud she said that, on the contrary, he was lucky to meet a good leader. This is a real stroke of luck. Because a more faithful servant cannot be found, the young man replied that there are many of them. Haven stated that she was a little concerned about one thing, whether it was too much. Mr. Spencer had been working for him for 15 years, Chef Sarah for 10 years, and Mr. Gaius for 5 years. They have been around him for quite a long time, and he is acting so heartless. He should listen to what others are saying. Stop pretending to be the smartest. Suddenly, the young man asked how she even knew how long they had been working here. I thought to myself that all three of them didn't particularly like to talk about how much they worked in the castle. Perhaps this was connected with one incident that once happened here. Our heroine realized that she had said too much, and she didn't know how to get out of this situation. But she thought of something to answer in time, and said that the thing was that she heard it from Genry. The guy asked if it was she who said that it was necessary to listen to their words. Then he added that he understood everything. Haven asked what exactly he understood, that they had been working here for a long time or what, but the young man replied that he would listen to them. When asked if he was serious, Julius asked if she was one of those simple-minded people who only understand things the third time. After some time, Winter asked why he was still sitting there. It was already morning. She promised to help with insomnia, but did not tell him to sleep today. Now it turned out that she didn't sleep all night either. Let her take a nap for an hour before work. She can skip breakfast. When she left, the young man noted to himself that he felt as if he would be able to fall into a deep sleep for 1 hour today. A few hours later, the butler wished good morning to the master, and he did the same in return. The man was so surprised that he even asked again what he had just said. His lordship wished him good morning for the first time in 15 years. That happens. When the Duke added that he should take napkins from the table, Spencer exclaimed that he had also prepared napkins for him. Well, I never. He noted to himself that it was all Haven. Who else, if not her, could have influenced the master, since he had changed so much, to squeeze her into this estate by any means necessary? After some time, the servants quietly discussed that an emergency had occurred, a clearly urgent case. The chef added that today, since early morning, everyone at the estate has been talking about the Duke going crazy. When Gaius brought him the parcels, the young man said that he was a good boy. Everyone was so surprised that one of the maids dropped a tray with a jug and a plate from her hands. Julius didn't even shout, but simply calmly told her to clean everything up. Sarah asked what to do now. How should they be? Spencer answered that he was also so happy that he was ready to die. I thought to myself that they had worked in this castle longer than anyone else, and the changes in the master's behavior were joyful, but at the same time frightening news. They never wanted him to treat them with care and affection. They just wanted him to hand over some of his burden and rely more on them. After all, the young man is only 15 years old and still a teenager. Therefore, he must do everything so that Winter remains near the master, after which he exclaimed that it was necessary to officially hire her. Asked how about making the master her guardian, the chef exclaimed that it was a great idea. The guardianship could last longer than just being employed. Suddenly, our heroine appeared and asked what the three of them were doing here at such a time. Suddenly, everyone started ruffling her hair and saying that she really did an amazing thing. When asked what exactly, the guys answered that she changed Mr. Julius. Winter exclaimed, in what sense, since she had not yet cured his insomnia? The boys objected that what she had achieved was already worthy of praise. The once cold gentleman had become emotional. Does she know what a great thing she had done? Julius praised Gaius for the first time in his life and wished the butler a good morning, and told the chef that the salad was very tasty. Our heroine could not understand what was happening, why they were so happy about such trifles, after which she tore herself away from their hands and exclaimed that she remembered that the gardener Fred had given her something to do, so they would see each other later. On the way, the girl thought that she hadn't done anything special, and they were already throwing her up and praising her. After which she came to the young man and asked what he had done today. He did not understand what she was talking about. I thought to myself, what the little one hasn't suffered in these few days, but she hasn't shed a single tear, and she can even behave impudently. Haven exclaimed, does he know how the maids and the butler looked at her today? They kept asking if she needed anything, all day long without stopping. When there was no answer, she added that she actually saw him smiling. Then she grabbed his hand and said that from today on he would have to start sleeping well, so he needed to go to the bed and lie down. When he lay down in bed, he asked what next. The girl answered that nothing. The Duke was surprised. In what sense, if he could fall asleep so easily, he would do it himself. Then the young man looked at where the little girl had sat down, and it was as if he had been struck by electricity. Ilian Genry sat in the same place by the window every night for a year. Why did the baby sit there? Then she said that she would watch him sleep and let the young man lie down and close his eyes. It is quite possible that he cannot sleep because he is scared. Haven will look after him and let Julius sleep. Richard was very angry about this. It all started yesterday. She laughed like Ilian Genry and sat calmly in her place by the window. Maybe someone is trying to make fun of him or worry him, so they sent this girl who looks so much like her. All sorts of thoughts crept into his head, which no longer seemed so funny that Ilian herself would worry about him, but that was impossible. Suddenly, Haven touched his head and said that she saw that he was thinking about something else. If he wanted to pretend to be asleep, he needed to relax his forehead. When the young man passed out, the girl exclaimed, who would have said that he had insomnia? She thought to herself that she had been watching him a lot, so she immediately understood. But Yuli never shows his fatigue in front of others. If even the servants began to worry about him, it means he is really on the edge. It looks like our heroine will have to work here longer this time. The next morning, she thought about how she had not slept for 2 days already because she was putting the Duke to bed, although he had only slept 1 night. Why is it so cold in the morning anyway? Isn't it summertime now? As soon as she noticed that she could smell rain, a heavy downpour began. Of course, if she stays another day in the castle, no one will say anything, but Tafa and Dino are waiting for her at home, and without her they can't even eat meat. When she ran into her house and exclaimed that she had arrived, she suddenly lost her balance and fell to the floor. The servants were completely horrified and shouted for her to say at least a word, but Haven did not answer. After some time, the assistant brought the Duke a parcel and noted to himself that it was raining cats and dogs, and he had not used magic. Today, Julius seems to be calm, for the first time in 2 months since Ilian Genry's departure. A little earlier, the butler informed him that Haven had left Mister's room this morning. He did not want to hear the answer, but said out loud that today, it seemed, the gentleman was in a good mood, after which the young man decided to check if something had happened during the night. After a short pause, the young man replied that he had slept soundly that night. Gaius was so stunned that he dropped all the papers from his hands, after which he began to apologize and collect everything. The Duke was physically different from ordinary people because the founder of the Riard clan was a dragon. Mister surpassed ordinary people in various criteria, since he had the blood of a dragon, and he could not sleep at all. but it was impossible not to take into account his other component, human blood. It's hard to even imagine how hard it was for him during those 2 months when he couldn't sleep at night. Then he noticed that one of the papers was a certificate of registration of the guardian. Initially, either he or Mr. Spencer was going to become Miss Haven's guardian. It is unknown whether Mr. Julius will accept this. Then he turned to his lordship and asked whether his night's sleep was due to Miss Winter. When the Duke replied that everything was correct, the assistant cautiously spoke about the contract with her. He heard that the Winter family was now having difficulties due to debts and that Julius was thinking about becoming her guardian. I noted to myself that she has the ability to attract people without much effort, just like Ilian Genri. Suddenly, Julius said that he should sort out the problem with the promissory note today, after which he asked where the girl was now. Gaius replied that the problem was that she had not come to the estate today. Meanwhile, the gardeners also did not understand what had happened to her, because she did not appear again. Perhaps she was pretending to be sick, but it is difficult to imagine that she could have become ill. The little one is worth 100 workers. She was always telling something. They already miss her. The man added that they needed to visit her after all, they owed her a lot. Then they turned their attention to the Duke and noted that for some reason they had been seeing him too often lately. One did not understand what was happening to him because he even dropped his scissors, while the other exclaimed that he urgently needed to water the eggplants. Fred told Garrick to come to him, judging by the fact that he had been walking around the garden for several days. He probably wanted to ask something. The guy exclaimed why he had to do this. After which he pointed his finger at his leader and added that it would be more logical if their leader approached him. When the man looked at the gentleman who had an ominous aura around him, he felt uneasy. After which he collected his thoughts, headed towards him, and asked if he wanted to ask anything. The young man looked very serious and asked where that Haven Winter girl had gone. The boys asked what happened. Maybe the gentleman wanted to say something. The young man had already started to get angry and asked how long they would not repeat the same thing. The man cautiously said that the thing was that they said the baby had a high fever. After the examination, the doctor said that most likely this happened due to overwork. After these words, Julius simply fell silent. Then he turned around and began to walk away abruptly, and the workers did not understand what had happened. Meanwhile, our heroine was thinking that 3 days had already passed, and in theory, she should already be healthy. This is probably all thanks to the maid, who was very worried about her and looked after her diligently. I got so sick because of some rain, probably because I treated the body of a 12-year-old girl too thoughtlessly. She never got sick like this in her childhood because she worked constantly and didn't even have time to think about it. Compared to her, this is just a luxurious body, and there is also a house where you can hide from the rain. Suddenly a maid appeared, who noted that she was already awake and asked if she needed anything. The girl said to prepare her clothes. When the girl exclaimed what she was even talking about, Haven said that she needed to go to the Duke's castle. Tafa did not calm down and asked why so quickly, because she had only rested for 3 days and she had a fever. Winter objected that it was not just 3 days, but 3 whole days. Others would have already been fired during that time. The assistant replied that she understood everything, but she still looked sick and emaciated. Taking the clothes from her hands, our heroine said that it was okay. Everything was fine. Dino then appeared in the room and announced that they had a guest at such an early hour. While they were talking among themselves, Haven dressed up and noted that it was beautiful. Things were going well in the garden, and now there was a contract with Richard. Perhaps she could hire more servants. Then she realized that she didn't have a steady income yet to hire people, but it would be nice to help Tafa and Dino at least a little. The girl's voice interrupted her thoughts and said that she had a guest. The girl asked who it was, if it was Mrs. Seran, who didn't even look like her aunt. When the maid said that it was not Rosanna, an angry voice was heard asking if there were no people in this old manor to take him to the drawing room. Our heroine immediately recognized Yuli and could not believe that he came here on his own. The maid got nervous and said that she would show them to the living room, but the little girl objected that it was now a warehouse, since they had agreed not to clean there. They will go to the garden, and she should not worry and continue cleaning. Tafa objected that a respected guest had come to visit her. It would be necessary to treat him with something. Haven replied that it was okay. The location didn't really matter. When they sat down at the table, Winter asked him what business he had without Mr. Gaius. The guy asked if she considered him a little boy who could not go anywhere without an assistant, like some. The little girl was indignant that, for his information, it was not Sir Dino who was helping her, but she was helping him, and, in general, what brought him here at such an early hour. Was he really going to go to work with her instead of the knight? The young man exclaimed, "What nonsense!" and handed her some envelope. The little girl asked what it was, and the boy asked if it was because of the heat that her tiny millet-like eyes stopped seeing. Haven was at first indignant to herself. Where had he ever seen millet of such a size? But then she read what was written there and was very surprised. Then she asked if this was really a guardian registration certificate. Did he want to become her guardian, or what? The young man looked at her carefully and asked, "What, she doesn't want this or something?" Our heroine was confused and replied that it wasn't that, she just didn't believe why he needed it. Or is this idea Mr. Gaius? She did not mean that he should do something he does not like. The guy asked if Haven really thought that he would do something by someone else's order, even if he does not like it. The girl answered that no. The Duke noted that she was thinking too much, perhaps wanting to find fault with the conditions. Winter objected that this was not the case. She just can't understand why he's proposing something like this to her. The young man said that she was asking too obvious things. This is all for the sake of sleeping peacefully every night. If everything is clear to her, let her sign it. Our heroine immediately shouted to her knight that she needed a pen. Let him bring it. The young man shouted that he would throw her now and let her catch him. When the clever girl caught it, Julius asked if he was not a knight, since he should serve his master and not throw objects. The little girl replied that it made no difference. There was no one here except the three of them anyway. The guy asked why three. The little one explained that Tadia, Dino, and she live in this estate. There are only three of them. The young man noted to himself that this was, of course, very economical, but the estate was too big for three. The little girl jumped off the chair and said that she had signed. Now it was time for her to go to work. The Duke noted that it seemed that she was finally ready for work. Our heroine looked at him and replied that, of course, it was necessary to earn money. The young man said that he would go then too. Haven happily added that they would see each other at the estate. After he left, the maid immediately asked what they were talking about. The girl dreamed that she would become her guardian. Tafa replied that this was very good, but why did he come here in person if they would have met in the castle anyway? The little girl wondered why he really came here for some signature on documents. When the young man came out to the gate, Gaius began to report that things had been resolved successfully, but the Duke did not listen to him, but simply passed by. The assistant did not understand what this cold look was. Did it really not work? The young man turned to him and angrily said that next time he would go on his own. In the carriage, the guy asked if Winter was feeling very ill. Perhaps he should send a priest to her. When the Duke replied that she had already recovered, the young man remarked what a relief it was. "It's not just about insomnia. Everyone in the castle misses Miss Haven." Julius replied that from today she will go to work again. The assistant was surprised. From today the girl had had so little rest. His lordship told him to send her the medicine, and in his name. After some time, Gaius thought about the fact that the master ordered to send medicine for the miss. How caring he is. This is the first time he behaves like this with someone other than Ilian Genry. But it is simply impossible to compare them. Suddenly the doors opened and our heroine appeared. The assistant immediately greeted her and said that he was welcome. The little girl noted that they had not seen each other for 3 days. The young man said that she looked healthy. That was very good. The baby replied that it was all thanks to care. Gaius reported that he heard that the gentleman had filed for guardianship. He has one question regarding his guardianship. After a while, the guys exclaimed, she was fired. What does this all mean? What is she going to do now?" The girl replied that now she needed to study. Garrick objected that he was not sure that she would sit still because she was such a fidget. Remembering the assistant's words about how about leaving work in the garden and getting a normal education, the girl thought that studying at 40 years old was too much. After which she said that she would still come to the castle, so let them not miss her too much. The man exclaimed, "Who else would miss her? Let her not complain later that it was difficult for her to study." The boss leaned over to her and said that he would hand over her salary through the night. The little girl thanked him for everything he had done for her. After which he clarified whether everything would be okay with her, since she always tries to solve problems on her own. The little girl noted that if they hadn't helped her, nothing would have worked out. The man made her promise that she would no longer do everything alone. If she has any difficulties, let her come at any time and ask for help when she needs it. Then our heroine turned to Jarek and asked if she could ask him for something. After some time, Haven was introduced to Baron Farda, who will teach her general subjects. They have not yet determined her level of knowledge, so it was decided to first test her and then hire additional teachers. The man bowed, introduced himself, and said that he was very glad to meet you. After which he added that they would not drag it out, but would immediately begin their studies. Winter asked if Mr. Gaius would also be present at the lesson. The guy replied that yes, today was the first lesson, so he decided to observe the process. Then the teacher began to tell her to solve different problems one after another. Our heroine noted to herself that she was finished. She knew absolutely nothing. Are any tasks important for life in this dangerous world? And what she doesn't like most is that Gaius is watching. He will probably report all this to that boy, and what will Julius think of her then? After some time, the teacher said that he thought that was enough for her for now. He would first start teaching the basics. The guy asked if he meant that her knowledge was at the level of 10-year-olds, or even younger. Baron Farda said that they would finish for today and would see each other tomorrow, after which they bowed to each other and said goodbye. Then the assistant whispered in her ear that it seemed the lessons would last longer than planned. The little girl finally felt uneasy and began to mentally ask the maid for forgiveness because it was all her own fault. After some time, the boy came to the Duke and said that he had come with a report. There is news that the Principality of Sitter has taken a leading position, especially many victories on the southern fronts, where Miss Ilian is located. She has abrasions and scratches, and she is limping on her left leg. The guy immediately said to send Senti to her. Gaius replied that, okay, like last time, he will tell her to pretend that this is a chance meeting. The young man asked what the shadows were doing at the moment. The assistant replied that Miss Ilian was moving too fast for him to keep up with. Julius immediately stated that he does not need such shadows that do not keep up with the owner. Let them replace them with others. The guy replied that, okay, send Senti and new shadows to the front. After which he added that the first lesson with Haven was over. The teacher said that her knowledge is at the level of a 10-year-old child, or even younger. When the Duke began to laugh hoarsely, Gaius decided that he had imagined it. Julius said that he had heard that Baron Farta was teaching. The assistant replied that yes, it seemed that there was no need for other teachers yet. It seems that the matter requires no delay, so from tomorrow he will begin studying with textbooks. The Duke asked if they were studying in the same room where he had studied as a child. The knight replied that it was true, but he noted to himself that he was smiling, or was it a hallucination? When asked where Winter was now, the young man replied that as soon as the lesson ended, she said that she needed to go somewhere. The gentleman asked to clarify where exactly she was going. The guy replied that she was going to the house of Mr. Garek, one of the divert gardeners, after which the young man added that they say he has a 15-year-old son. Julius stated that it turns out that she left in order to see this 15-year-old boy. Gaius replied that yes, at that age you can already date boys. The gentleman hissed that he should immediately find out where this Jarek lived and report to him. Meanwhile, our heroine approached the house and thought to herself that it seems to be here. In theory, she found it all correctly. Eric Milton suddenly appeared and asked why she was hanging around the door of someone else's house. Who she was, anyway. The little girl explained that her name was Haven Winter and that Uncle Garrick had invited her to visit. The boy exclaimed that this was really the girl that her father had spoken of. Then he immediately took her by the hand, led her into the house and told her mother that this was Haven, whom her father had told her about. The woman noted that she turned out to be a beautiful girl. Then Mom said that they should go to the market and let him show her the house. The guy was a little confused and asked if she wanted anything. Our heroine replied that it was okay, just let her look at her textbooks. The young man was a little surprised, but led her into his room and said that they were in the bookcase on the right, after which he added that she was somehow strange. Did she really come here because of the textbooks? The little girl answered that she was just curious about what 15-year-olds are studying now, and he can do his own thing. After some time, Haven heard some strange sounds and decided to go see what Eric was doing. It turned out that the guy was assembling a sailboat, so I concluded that he loved ships. That's very cool. Although ships of this type are not used lately, Milton asked if she knew anything about ships. The little one answered that, of course, because in order to have power in another country, one must sail. That is, she wants to say that she often sailed on ships. The guy immediately asked which ones, whether she got seasick or not. Winter replied that not really, she had never felt seasick, but she thought to herself that she both worked and lived on the ship, so she never got seasick. After which she said that a triangular sail is better than a rectangular one. The guy objected that it is best to use both. This will allow you to capture the force of the wind. I noted to myself that this kid was simply carried away, although on such a small continent as Dvarlich he could hardly have a normal conversation with anyone about this topic. Suddenly the mother's voice was heard, saying that she had returned and asking if Haven also liked ships. The little one replied that she simply loved to travel and was interested in hearing stories about them. The woman said that Eric was simply going crazy about them. He did such a thing when he said that he wanted to make a ship. The young man was indignant that he would stop chatting, let them go down, and he would finish and go down. The girl shouted that she would also look at the books a little more and come down with him. After some time, the guy exclaimed that he was finished. Let him look at his magnificent ship, isn't it amazing? Winter said that it was very beautiful and similar to the one she had sailed on before, the ship Carlos. Eric exclaimed, "In what sense, since he hasn't been to sea for 10 years? The little one immediately said that it seemed that Mr. Garrick had arrived. We need to go down quickly. On the way, the guy said why he was calling them, because he didn't really want to see them. The man was indignant, saying that was enough, let him say hello, since they had a guest. When Milton saw Julius, he asked what was the matter, since he looked to be the same age as him. The father immediately grabbed him by the head and exclaimed, "What kind of rudeness is this? This is the Duke himself. Let him greet him properly." The gentleman thought to himself that there really was something between Haven and this uncouth boy. After some time, the mistress of the house noted that it was nothing special, but she hoped that his lordship would like it, and the little one noted to herself that she had never thought that he would agree so easily. It was very unexpected. After which, she said that she had prepared so many delicious things, even her favorite eggs. The woman said that Haven and Eric had not come down from the second floor for so long. What were they talking about there? The guy replied that the girl knew a lot about ships, and that he didn't know anyone like that among his acquaintances. The little girl objected that, compared to him, she knew nothing at all. He made a ship, Carlos, with triangular and rectangular sails. The Duke asked if he meant a disused sailing vessel. Haven noted to herself that the situation was heating up. She needed to change the subject quickly. Therefore, she quickly said that it is still very cool to see ships with their sails spread in the port. Even the heart begins to beat faster. Julius said that now no one uses sails anyway. With the advent of magical ships, sailing ships became unprofitable for trade. And if you take into account the required number of sailors and cargo, you can understand that stopping sailing was the right decision, the little girl exclaimed. Did they grow these vegetables themselves? She saw a small garden in front of the house. When it was already dark, our heroine thanked them for today's reception and delicious dinner. The family told her to come visit again. Our heroine thanked them again and said that they would see each other again if there was an opportunity. On the way, the little girl asked where his cart was. Whether she should walk with him, the guy replied that he had come on foot. Why was she suddenly offering to walk with him? Our heroine did not understand what was happening to him and asked why he came here. She had been seeing him too often lately. The young man asked if she had really come here to see this guy. Our heroine was confused and replied that no, she had come for a completely different reason. When asked which one, the girl thought about what to answer. She couldn't say that she didn't know anything at all, so she wanted to look at the textbooks. The Duke stated that, yes, they say that her level is lower than that of 10-year-olds. Is that really why? Haven noted that she didn't think that the news would spread so quickly. The young man added that if he didn't want to disgrace Richard's mouth, he should think more about his studies. The little one replied that, of course, one might think that she was going to skip classes. The young man asked again if she really hadn't come here to see that guy. The little one asked if he had come here specifically to check this. The Duke immediately objected. Who had told her that, Winter asked, why had he come then? When there was no answer, the little girl said that then they would assume that he wanted to check if she had a lover. After the Duke didn't answer this either, the little girl asked why he was silent, somehow awkwardly. Julius replied that he had simply come to see if she had really come here to have fun. Haven exclaimed that his castle was in the wrong direction. Had he really forgotten the way home without Gaius? Actually, her house was in that direction. Riard replied that he had already said that he could do everything without an assistant. Winter asked where he was going then. He said that his house was on the other side. It was already dark. He should return to the castle quickly. The young man wearily asked if she still didn't understand. It was already dark outside, so it was dangerous for her to return home, not for him. And it was not he who forgot the way, but she. After which he asked why she stood up. Had she still not understood that he wanted to walk her home? Haven thought to herself that before she was protecting him, but now he was. Before Julius looked small, but now it seemed the opposite. After which she realized out loud that she was just a little 12-year-old girl. The young man was surprised that she had only just realized this. She couldn't even imagine when the little one would grow up. The little girl exclaimed that he would still see everything. She would drink a lot of milk and would outgrow him. The next day, the teacher asked if she had written everything yet. When she gave him the piece of paper, the man asked if she liked studying. Our heroine answered that she tried. Showing a sheet of paper covered in red, the Baron asked why she had such grades. The little one answered that she didn't know, but she thought to herself that wasn't it too much to study in one day: state position, social classes, family clans. After which she asked for forgiveness and said that she would try harder next time. Farta replied that she should learn everything by the next lesson. Haven thought to herself, what kind of life do 12-year-olds have? She doesn't want to live like that anymore. But out loud she answered, okay. The man said that she was not at all interested in studying this, was she? Perhaps she wanted to study something else. Usually children in aristocratic families learn fencing or magic from childhood. If she wants, she can learn it. The little girl noted to herself that this was already interesting. She had been involved in fencing when she was a mercenary. Now she is an aristocrat, so she has the opportunity to learn magic, and the Baron is a first-circle mage, which is a great chance. After which I asked him what magic is. Let him tell me. The man replied that first she would need to study ancient languages, and then the theory of mana accumulation and the 6 elements. The little one interrupted him and exclaimed that she chose fencing, but to herself she thought that her head was about to burst from the flow of information. The teacher replied that then it would be better to learn fencing from this person, Miss Haven. The assistant bowed and said that from today on he would be teaching her fencing, and his name was Gaius Wren. Winter replied that she was pleased to meet him, but she thought to herself that not only did he constantly check how she was studying, but now he would also teach fencing. Although the young man is such a conscientious person, he will be able to teach her properly. The guy started to tell that every knight has something that is very important in fencing, as she thinks. What exactly is this? The girl answered that it is experience. The young man asked what was the most important thing he had. When our heroine answered that it was strength, Gaius objected that it was close, but it was a physical state. In the young man's classes, there is no room for laziness at all. They will start with running, only 6 laps, if you find it hard. Then you can switch to walking to rest a little. When he finishes, he will allow you to take the sword in your hands. Winter immediately got down to business, and the guy shouted after her not to overdo it, but the little girl decided that she would show what she was capable of. But on the 3rd lap, the little one started to run out of breath. Gaius worriedly said that if she was tired, then they could finish for today. The girl thought to herself that her body was so heavy, but she couldn't give up no matter what. The young man only shouted after her that following the training schedule from the first day might be difficult. Having crossed the line for the 6th time, our heroine fell on her back and exclaimed that she had made it. Gaius said that she shouldn't lie down right away. It could be dangerous. Now he will help her to get up, but the girl objected that she could do it herself. The young man noted to himself how stubborn she was, maybe it seemed to him, but for some reason he remembered Ilian. Haven began running every morning to strengthen her strength, and gradually became friends with the knights of the Reihart clan. During training, one of them asked if he was really going to learn fencing. Our heroine replied that yes, it was true, or Sir Philip did not believe her. The guy replied that she was just a girl, and at her age people are usually interested in jewelry, not swords. The little girl objected that she liked swords more, and no one forbade her from studying fencing. Suddenly, another young man leaned over to her and asked if she would like them to teach her a little. In the Giraffe Empire, becoming a knight of the Rehard clan was much more difficult than getting into the royal guard. At some point, the clan's security system was strengthened, which only made the selection of knights more difficult. When the little one replied that, of course, the young man said that they would teach her fencing, there was no need to worry and let her follow him. The little girl thought to herself that this was all well and good, but Gaius said that they would start with running, and when they finished, he would allow her to take up the sword. Then she asked what about meeting today after class. Philippe replied that it was fine. They always train in the first room. Let him come there. After some time, standing in front of the huge doors, Haven thought to herself that this was the training hall of the knights of the Rehard clan. She, as a person who is familiar with fencing, was also interested to know how good the knights of this clan were. When she went there, some guys started looking at her and wondering if she was really going to study fencing. Just let them look at her thin hands. Would she even be able to hold a sword? Philippe immediately intervened and told them to leave her alone, but the guys did not calm down and asked how she was going to do it. She was so small and thin. Winter asked how it could interfere with the study. One of them added that she is the same age as the cadets who are preparing to become knights. But compared to them, she is still very small. The largest of them now is Litrick. The doors suddenly swung open, and that same Litrick appeared, who noted that it turns out that she is the same girl that Sir Gaius is training. Our heroine looked at him with a defiant look in her eyes and asked, "What if she—" The young man exclaimed, "Who the hell is she to distract the Duke's assistant from his work?" The little girl stated that he could not accept the fact that she was being trained by Sir Gaius himself. The guy replied that naturally, even the cadets had never received personal training from him. Haven noted to herself that, if you think about it, for such guys, such a famous knight was simply an object of envy, after which she replied that it seemed that something was wrong with him, but she couldn't do anything about it, because they had already agreed with him. The young man declared that he was challenging her to a duel, and if he won, he would recognize her as Gaius's student. Philippe exclaimed, was he crazy or something? Was he really going to fight with such a little girl? After thinking for a bit, our heroine replied that if it would calm him down, then she would agree. The guy was surprised that she really agreed to fight Litrick. This guy has been preparing to become a knight for a long time. What if he hurts her? Winter thought to herself that even though he was a kid, she was also a little girl now. A young man intervened in the conversation and told Philippe that it was enough. It would be a good experience for the girl. If it was too dangerous, they would immediately intervene. The guy was indignant that she had never even held a sword in her hands. After some time, it was announced that Haven and Litrick should come forward and prepare for battle. Holding the wooden sword in her hands, the little one thought that Gaius had not yet allowed her to use a real sword, so there was nothing she could do. The boys looked into each other's eyes, and each of them noted to himself that he was not going to give in. After this, the young man was the first to decide to attack our heroine with a real sword. The blue-haired boy stated that Haven's stance resembled a double sword technique. When Litrick had already come close to her, our heroine blocked his attack with her leg and wooden sword, after which she forcefully pushed him away from herself and knocked the weapon out of his hands. Then she hit him on the head with all her might with the wooden scabbard. The young man couldn't believe that he had lost to a girl who had never held a sword in her hands. While Haven was thinking that she had defeated him too easily, the young man said that they should fight again. The little girl replied that she didn't want to, but the guy insisted because he was simply mistaken. Winter asked if he really thought that there was a second chance in war. After which she added that if it were a real sword, it would have already been lying there for two. The guy shouted that he should just admit his defeat. There was no need to be ashamed of the fact that he lost to a girl. Suddenly, the voice of the commander Lex was heard, who asked what they were doing here. He told them to train, and they were having fun. Do they really want to fly out of here? Then she turned her attention to Litrick and asked what he was doing here at all. The blue-haired guy hurried to explain everything to him. After listening to everything, the man immediately said that he could not be distracted during the battle, because he had not taught him that. After which he asked if he was offended, and if he wanted to win, the young man answered that he did. After which the commander began to ask the little girl to give him another chance. The girl replied that she should try to ask for it on the battlefield. The man patted her on the head and replied that she was right, but our heroine was indignant to herself. Whose head was he even touching? But she misses him. If this were Ilian's body, he would have already offered to have a drink for the joyful meeting. Lex added that they were not on the battlefield. He would like to take a look at it, so let him fight one more time. Our heroine noted to herself that she would get tired faster than she would be able to refuse him since he was serious, and she replied that, "Good." As they began preparing for battle, the man noted to himself that these two swords brought back memories of someone. Now her body is relaxed, but if you apply force, she will have a stance like Ilian Genry. Suddenly Gaius appeared, saying that she missed the beginning of the fencing lesson. As far as the guy knows, this lesson has already ended. The little girl apologized and added that she just dropped by for a minute. Litrick immediately greeted him and introduced himself, and Lex said that he was welcome. The young man asked the commander if they could go then. The man replied that of course he would not delay him, but Litrick was glad that Mr. Gaius accepted his greeting. But when they went their separate ways, our heroine felt some strange atmosphere. Lex noted to himself that no matter how you look at it, this was definitely the Ilian Genry two-sword style, should he tell Gaius about it. The guy said that he understood that she wanted to learn fencing as soon as possible, but she still shouldn't have entered the knight's training hall, and that if she had gotten hurt, Haven would have apologized. The young man said that from that day on, they would take up fencing closely. Since she is so eager to learn, let her take her wooden sword out of its sheath. Noticing the cracks, the Duke's assistant immediately asked if she had taken part in sparring. It seemed that her opponent was quite strong, and he noted to himself that such damage should be expected when confronting a real wooden sword, but how come it didn't break? After which he asked if she had won. The little one was his first student, so she could not allow herself to lose. The girl didn't know what to answer, because what would happen to her reputation if she said that she had defeated the boy? Suddenly, Gaius said that judging by her reaction, the result was disappointing. Next time they meet again, she should definitely win. He will make absolutely every effort for this, our heroine thought to herself. Wasn't the guy too hasty in his conclusions? After some time, the young man said that she would have to devote a lot of time to practice. The girl asked what this meant. She had no ability in fencing, or what? Gaius replied that, nevertheless, the abilities will be revealed over time if she trains hard, and he noted to himself that her body is sharpened for the style of two swords. But in any case, the most important thing is the base. He doubts that he will be able to correct her habits. It is cruel, but it remains to tell the truth. Our heroine couldn't believe that she had no ability for fencing, after which she said that it was time for her to go. Then she went to the blind woman and asked if she really had any talent for fencing. The old lady exclaimed that she was a crazy girl. Haven was indignant. Why is that? Tafa replied, "What is she even talking about? How can a mercenary who makes money by waving a knife ask such a question? If he continues to talk nonsense, he will immediately fly out from behind her house, so he better cover his mouth." Our heroine replied that she had already learned fencing and thought that she would easily succeed in her other style. The woman noted that it was too late to learn anything. Just let her do what she was good at. Winter noted to herself that not only was she living a second life, but no one had warned her that she would have to go through a long path of learning. The old woman added that, besides, her main weapon is a bow, not a sword, isn't that right? So she should take up that. Otherwise, she's talking some nonsense about fencing. Our heroine exclaimed that, if you think about it, it was true. There was no reason to lose heart, and the woman asked where she was learning fencing. And her voice still hasn't returned. Has her cold really gone away yet? Let him give her his hand. The girl immediately said that it was time for her to go. She had a meeting, and she would leave the glass on the table. At the end, the little girl said that she would come again, since she would be settling in the capital for a while. The old woman was indignant that she shouldn't come, since she had told her not to return until she died. Tafa noted that she usually appears when she wants and also disappears, but here she didn't make promises before, because she knew that she could die at any moment. This is not like her at all. The next day, Gaius said that at the end of summer there are always various combat competitions, including fencing, and that is what interests her. Having handed her 2 tickets, the guy added, "How about going once as a spectator? It would definitely help her." When asked if he would go with her, the young man replied that he was planning to accompany Mr. Julius, so she would have to go with someone else. After which he added that the lesson was over for today. Our heroine thanked him for the work he had done. Haven wondered who she could go with. The first one that came to mind was Dino, but he was too protective of her and wouldn't let her watch the competition in peace. Tafa was unlikely to be interested in that. While she was thinking that her limited circle of acquaintances was killing her, Litrick appeared in the room. Seeing that Gaius was gone, the guy said with disappointment that he had miscalculated again, but he had been the first to finish training on purpose. The girl objected that he still froze at every meeting, so what difference did it make? When the guy asked what kind of tickets they were, Winter replied that Gaius had given her 2 for a fencing competition, and the young man immediately declared that they would go together then. Our heroine was horrified. Why on earth should she go with him? Litrick muttered that most likely the cadets would gather to go together, but then he would not be able to watch the tournament in peace. Haven muttered that she thought it would be better for her to go alone. The young man was indignant that he had suggested that she go together. Our heroine replied that she would think about it. In principle, going with the boy is also not bad, but there is still time before the competition. It is better to think about it. Suddenly, she ran into the chef and said that she was just returning from class. Sarah noted that this is great. If she goes through the garden, then please let her hand over this baking to the gardeners. Seeing Haven with a basket in her hands, the man immediately noted that he was actually hungry. Sitting down on the mat, Garrick asked her if she liked studying. The girl answered that yes, it was true, a little difficult. The gardener said that, by the way, he heard that aristocrats often undergo harsh training at home, sometimes even using rods. The little girl thought that the Baron would most likely fall unconscious from the spanking, although no, with his character, he would not be able to punish in principle. Therefore she answered that what other rods, the teacher is very kind to her. The man said that then he is calm. Suddenly a young man appeared and said that his son had come there. Garrick was surprised as to why he had come there. Upon seeing his father, the young man declared that it was a great honor, but in fact he had said that he had not come to see him. The man immediately hit him on the head and exclaimed that it would have been better for him to sit at home and read books. After which he asked why he came here at all, but for some reason he fell silent and did not answer. Then she asked how long their lunch would last. Her father answered that it would be over soon. Eric said that he would go then, after which he shouted to our heroine to take him to the exit, please. On the way, the little one asked what the matter was. Why did he have to come if he was leaving right away? The young man hesitated a little, but then handed her 2 green tickets. Before even picking them up, Haven asked if it was a martial arts tournament. The guy replied that it was, and offered to go together. The next day, the boys looked at each other angrily and asked who this was. The little girl explained that this was Litrick, a knight cadet, and this was Eric, the son of Uncle Garrick. One of them exclaimed who this Uncle Garrick was. The other asked how she knew this cadet. The girl said that it was enough to chatter because it was time to go, but she thought to herself that she had created a headache for herself. Litrick asked how old she was, why she was carrying a backpack, and also claimed that she was not a baby. Eric noted that it didn't look like it was full. What did she put in there? Haven replied that she was 12, and what was inside was none of their business. Then they exclaimed that she should watch the hand-to-hand combat. It was crazy. That guy had boulders instead of fists. Winter noted to herself that they were surprised by such a weak fight. What else could you expect from youngsters? Suddenly, Litrick announced that a hunting tournament among the aristocracy would be held at the opening ceremony. When our heroine asked and what, the guy answered that Mr. Julius would definitely take part. And that means Sir Gaius will also be present. Our heroine immediately noted to herself that he wants to look at him. Somehow this all goes beyond all boundaries of respect. But about the Duke, it's very interesting because she never saw him use magic or a sword at full power. After which I asked where all this would be held. Litrick confidently answered that he knew. Sometime later, finding themselves in some wilderness, the little girl asked if he was sure that this was it, since he said that it was 20 minutes from the opening ceremony. Eric added that they had been walking for over an hour. It sounded like he knew, so they trusted him, but in the end, they would get anywhere today. The little one said that she had already looked around. It looked like they were in the Bellow Forest. When asked how she understood this, Winter replied that there are a lot of giant sequoias here. Most of them grow in this forest. It turns out that in that direction is the west. Litrick asked if she was saying this because she knew where they were. The girl replied that she would not know. She was just going west. Eric asked in surprise how she guessed that the west was exactly there. Our heroine mysteriously answered that it was all just experience. I didn't explain anything further because I saw some people not far ahead. When the boys started asking what was going on there, she told them to stand silently. She managed to hear snatches of phrases about Duke Richard and that the mercenaries would soon make their move. Littrick whispered and asked what they were talking about since he couldn't hear anything. Eric replied that he had already been told to keep quiet, so let him listen. When the strangers began to leave, the guy was surprised that they would really let them go so easily since they were lost, but our heroine told him not to dare move from the spot. After which she added that they should continue walking in the same direction and that she needed to find something. The young man was indignant. What nonsense! If we are going to go, then we should all go together, because it is dangerous to go alone. But Littrick said they'll do as Haven told, he knows how to get out, so no need to worry. The young man wanted to object again, but the little girl interrupted him and thanked them for their understanding. When the boys had moved away some distance, the little girl began to take a bow out of her backpack and think about what a good thing she had taken with her, after which she realized that it would only be enough for one shot, but nothing could be done. She had to protect the Duke. At a hunting tournament for aristocrats, they usually catch small animals, but she doesn't see anything like that. Something is fishy here. It's been so long since those two disappeared. It's a shame I couldn't see their faces. Suddenly, she came across the Duke and thought that it was good that he was whole. But then she looked up and saw mercenaries sitting on the branches with knives in their hands. Our heroine did not understand how he could become a target for the killers. Even in her previous body, she would not have been able to cope with such a number. Doesn't the guy notice this fierce thirst for murder? It is necessary to warn him as soon as possible. But before she could even utter a peep, the attackers began to act. At that very moment, protective magic was activated around the young man. In just a split second, all the opponents were neutralized. It was amazing, but if you think about it, Julius used magic differently than ordinary magicians. The Duke could easily move things without using any spell. He could even create a ladder in the air. It can't be called human. While the girl was thinking about all this, she noticed another mercenary who remained on the tree. Therefore, she decided that now was not the time to indulge in memories. It had been a long time since she had picked up a bow, and she didn't even know whether she would hit the target or not. In fact, Ilian Genry is a renowned marksman, so our heroine will cope. After which she launched her only arrow and mentally prayed that it would hit where it needed to. And so it happened. She managed to accurately hit the arrow that the attacker launched and shoot it down. The young man, of course, noticed all this and immediately activated his inhuman magic. Haven noted to herself that it was an overwhelming force. The air was so heavy that it was difficult to even breathe. The Duke also stated that this bow belonged to Ilian Genry. Our heroine laughed nervously and replied that she had grabbed it from the storage room that very day. The gentleman did not answer this, but simply told her to climb onto the horse. It was too high for the little one, so there was no way she could climb up. But the guy asked her if she was going to ride that way, but she answered that she wasn't at all. Then the young man picked her up and helped her sit down as needed so that it would be comfortable to ride. Then the little girl exclaimed that it was time to go. The young man noted that she seemed not to notice that someone had slowed the horse down. Winter was indignant to herself that one could think that she was heavy. Julius asked if Genry had taught her. The little one replied that they weren't even close, and besides, the woman was very busy. The Duke noted that she was indeed busy, so much so that she could not settle down in one place, but the Haven stand did not give him peace. It looked exactly like the stance in which Ilian holds her bow. The little girl noted to herself that she hadn't thought about it at all. Had he really guessed that she was Genry? After which she objected that everyone holds the bow the same way. The guy replied that the woman pulls the bowstring with her index and middle fingers, so she always held the cigar with her ring finger. Winter was surprised that he really remembered all the habits that even she herself did not know about. The young man continued, because the skin on all the other fingers was worn away, the baby was trying to calm down. Otherwise, he would only find her more suspicious. It was necessary to change the subject. The young man added that she always presses the bowstring to her lips, after which he asked who she was, and deathly silence fell around. After some time, when they returned to the boys, Eric immediately headed towards the horse to help the girl, but the Duke took her with one hand and helped her down himself. The assistant asked if they had returned safely, if anything serious had happened. The guy replied that no, our heroine did not understand what was going on, why he had helped her. Litrick asked what she had gotten herself into, why Mr. Richard had brought her. The little girl replied that they had met by chance. The guy asked if she found what she was looking for, why she went anywhere at all. Our heroine thought to herself that she had to find Julius, but she couldn't say it. Haven herself does not understand why she rushed to look for him. She does not understand either her feelings or the feelings of the Duke. Even after returning from the forest, life again flowed as usual. Every day she came to the castle to study and train. However, she was not able to meet Julius. This was the only exception. Every time they told her that he was busy, that he had a lot of trips, and upon returning he buried himself in work. Whether to pass on something to him, the girl answered that no, she just had something to talk to him about. She noted to herself that 2 weeks had already passed since the incident in the forest. Could he really be avoiding her? But judging by Gaius's haste, the guy really was busy. The knight said that he had no excuse. He had to take care of his master's sleep, but he could not keep his promise. The little girl exclaimed that he had nothing to do with it at all. It wasn't Gaius who was throwing things at him. The young man thanked her for her understanding. After which she said that the butler Spencer has also been busy lately. Perhaps there is some reason. The young man cautiously said that the fact was that Mr. Julius would soon be leaving. She knows that at present a war has broken out between the Kingdom of Finton and the Duchy of Sitter. He had to go there. The war has dragged on longer than they expected. He cannot go into a more detailed explanation, but it does not bode well for the Empire, so the master has to intervene. Our heroine did not understand what was happening, because in the time of Ilion, the war had already ended in the fall. After hearing all this, the girl said that she really needed to talk to the Duke. After some time, lying in bed, the baby noted that the future had changed, and she hadn't even thought about it. In that case, he who should not have died can now say goodbye to life. And the one who was supposed to be born may not be born at all. In his past life, Julius did not leave the ducal castle and did not go to war. The guy had never left the capital of Dvalach. If the future had changed so much, then what about her son, who had not yet been born? Now was not the time to sit back. She had to see for herself what Ilion Genry was up to. Suddenly a maid looked into the room and asked if everything was all right with her. Perhaps something had happened in the Duke's castle. Haven replied that she had a written test today, for which she received a bad grade, and because of this, she is in a completely bad mood. The maid replied that she need not worry so much about her studies. Perhaps she should prepare something sweet for her. But the little girl replied that it was okay. She would rather study alone. Tafa replied that she fully supports her, and if she needs anything, she should just call. The little one thought that her departure now would not solve anything. She needed to focus on her duties at Haven Winter. Ilion's life was extremely busy and difficult. On the other hand, she had become so accustomed to peace and quiet that she had even forgotten about what she really needed to do. 5 years later, before winter comes, she must save a child who tragically passed away. But at the moment, our heroine is also very worried about the changes in the Duke's life. If she cannot go to war, then before his departure, they need to meet at all costs. Gaius said that he had finished all his business in the castle for today, so he had a little time to talk. Let it pass. Upon seeing Haven, the guy asked what was the matter. She replied that she had heard that he was leaving soon. The young man asked how it concerned her. Winter asked when he would leave. He replied that in 3 days. Our heroine noted that he was no longer indignant. Why was she asking how it was before? The girl means that they managed to get a little closer. The guy was surprised by her words. Winter added that the young man no longer kicks her out, as he did the first few times, after which she suddenly approached him and asked if he was planning to meet Genry during the war. The young man replied that no, she must be on the southern front, and he would not go further than the palace of the Duchy of Sitter. The little one asked if he really had to go, but she thought to herself that she was trying to hold back Julius. It was just laughter. When the Duke answered that it was necessary, she thought that she now understood, but it was still difficult to imagine what a guy felt when it was difficult for him to even find a day to leave. Suddenly, the young man said that it all sounded as if she did not hope that he would come back. Haven asked when he would return back. The young man answered that when the war ends. Then she asked if it suddenly drags on for a few more years. His lordship replied that he would then return back a few years later. Winter laughed and said that maybe she should write him letters then. The young man replied, only if she didn't care that he would tear them up. The little girl thought that perhaps she was worrying in vain. The little girl thought that after the forest the ice had at least moved a little, but their relationship remained unchanged. Finally, she wanted to warn him that he must be wary of the high priest. She noted to herself that from her past life she knew perfectly well how this war would end. The high priest who helped start the war against the Filton kingdom was hanged in the capital of the Duchy of Cetar. Even if the future changes, the fact remains. When our heroine added that she wished him a happy journey, the Duke noted that she spoke as if she wished him death. The girl replied that it seemed to him, but in fact she wished him to return safe and sound. The Duke rose from his chair and said that if he did not die and returned back, then would she tell him who she really was. After this, the young man went to the Duchy of Cetar. Time passed. The winter of the 3rd year came since Julius left. The girl looked at herself in the mirror and thought that she hadn't grown at all. That was simply impossible. How is that possible? She trained physically every day and lived to be 15 years old, but she grew and got stuck at 160. During Ilian's years, she was already 180, so why is she so small now? Suddenly a maid appeared and asked what was the matter. It was cold today. Let her at least put on a cape. Our heroine thanked her. This was the beginning of the 15th year of the life of Haven Winter. Tafa exclaimed that since she was dressed, all that was left was to do her hair. Could she sit down? After which she noted that she seemed to be in a bad mood today. The girl replied that she had not grown a millimeter since last year. The maid said that girls usually stop growing at 15. She doesn't think the mistress will tolerate any more changes. Haven asked why Litrick is still getting higher every day, and Eric has already grown to 180. Tafa noted that, no matter how you look at it, they are going through a period of growth. Our heroine said that she is hitting where it hurts. The maid added that it was very interesting how the Duke had grown during this time. Our heroine replied that even then he was already over 1.70 meters now, probably somewhere like Eric. But she thought to herself that she had not seen him for 3 whole years. The maid said that she heard that the war was already over. Why didn't the gentleman come back? The girl replied that the butler Spencer said that he still had unfinished business. The war dragged on compared to the previous life, but eventually ended last year with the victory of Cetar. However, there is still one change. The priest who was supposed to die remained alive. Most likely Julius stayed to sort this out. Tafa stated that this meant that he should not be expected until spring. Our heroine replied that she did not know this, but that there was some reason why he should return before spring. The maid replied that, of course, her debut would happen at that time. Winter asked what her debut has to do with Julius's comeback. The maid replied that she did not want to say such a thing, but the only people she knew in social circles were the Riard family, and if it was an evening organized by that family, she would be able to make her debut without any obstacles. Our heroine exclaimed that then she would simply spend her own evening. Tafa was indignant that she had neither a budget nor acquaintances that she could invite. The girl objected that money could always be obtained. And in general, if she has forgotten about this, she will remind you, her special feature is friendliness. After some time, Litrick said that the Blue Garden is now the most favorite place of the daughters of the aristocracy, so the lazy knights constantly hang out there to show off in front of them. In an artificial garden that never fades all year round, the atmosphere of a fairy tale reigns. No wonder that ladies cannot stand in front of it. Then she noted that in this uniform, the boy turned into a respectable adult. On the way they met Eric, who asked why the two of them had come there. Our heroine pointed her finger at the winter garden and replied that it was for work. The guy asked why she went with Litrick instead of him. The girl replied that he was not a knight. The young man asked if only a knight could handle this. Looking at the guys arguing among themselves, our heroine thought that if you look at it that way, they both came out on top and could be useful. After which, she hugged them both and said that they could all work together. The young man asked in what sense, but she said that he only needed to come, and there was no talk of that. Eric was indignant that he was uncomfortable. Let him let go first and then talk. Haven stated that there was nothing special to do, just have them follow her, pretending to be her subordinates. Litrick was in uniform, so that would do, and Eric was just in full dress. The guy will be her knight for training. He immediately became indignant. Why should he be her knight? The young man will be her servant. He was so confused that he didn't even know what to answer. Seeing their discontent, Haven added that, "Please, what else are friends for?" Littrick replied that, let's say their appearance suits the status, but we can start with the fact that she is not wearing a dress. Let her look at the cafe. Does she see at least one lady in the same pantsuit as hers? Eric thoughtfully said that if you think about it, his words make sense, but the guy added that with her current image, nothing would work out. The girl said that it seemed they still didn't understand anything. Her appearance was her weapon. When this company appeared in the Winter Garden, the girls decided that it was my lord, and behind him were his knights. Littrick thought to himself that he knew it would be like this. Who would recognize her as a lady in such a state? Suddenly, Miss Bianca's voice was heard from the balcony, saying that she was seeing this milord for the first time. Could she find out his name? Our heroine looked at her carefully and confidently answered that her name was Haven Winter. The girl noted that this name was familiar to her, but nevertheless let her look around to see if there were other milords present. Haven replied that there was no one here. The girl immediately picked up that, unfortunately, this place was not intended for men. 2 blocks from here there is a salon that is often visited by the sons of aristocrats. Why shouldn't he go there? Winter replied that she was immensely grateful for her concern. However, she cannot follow her suggestion to visit that very salon. Therefore, she would like to introduce herself once again. She is the only lady of the Winter Haven family line. Everyone present did not expect such a turn of events at all, so they even fell into a stupor. Littrick noted that this whole situation had been fraught with danger from the very beginning, whether she would be able to survive in this crowd. Our heroine noted that she seemed to surprise them. She just doesn't enjoy wearing dresses. Hearing these words, Bianca silently turned around and began to climb back up. The young man quietly asked her if she was sure that it was even possible to say that. Eric stated that he could tell that her behavior would rather make her a black sheep among the ladies. Even he was not sure that this was a good idea. Haven replied that it was okay. Let them watch everything carefully. The guy was indignant at what she was going to do. After this, our heroine silently headed to the sofa and simply sat down on it. One of the girls approached her cautiously and asked if she could find out which family Haven was from, since this was their first meeting. Winter replied that she was from the Baron's family. It is a great honor for her to meet such a beautiful lady. Would she like to sit here and chat? Other aristocrats also expressed a desire to sit at her table if she did not mind. The girl said that when she first saw her, she had no doubt that she was the son of an aristocrat. Our heroine replied that sometimes such misunderstandings arise. One way or another, she doesn't wear dresses. But for the sake of learning fencing, she had to give up dresses and long hair. One of the aristocrats asked in surprise if no one in her circle had said a word to her. Haven replied that of course there were many who expressed concern, but for the sake of her dream, she was ready to renounce anything. When the girls exclaimed that Winter was simply amazing, the boys noted that it seemed like they had worried in vain. Bianca, who was watching all this from the second floor, did not like this whole situation at all. When our heroine was about to leave, she was asked when they could expect her again. She replied that she didn't know because she still needed to practice her fencing diligently. The aristocrats asked her to send them a message if she decided to come again. Littrick stated that she was a typical womanizer. Eric objected that they were all women anyway. The boys both couldn't understand why their mood had dropped so much. Suddenly it dawned on the young man, did this kid also like Haven? Getting closer to the lady from the Blue Garden went like clockwork. Stories about Ilian's adventures became an interesting topic of conversation, thanks to which she was able to easily fit in. Of course, her appearance and training in fencing did not pose any threat to the girls. This place could be considered the very battlefield for aristocrats. The successful debut of the daughter of an aristocrat has a great influence on high society. The attitude towards the lady changes depending on which of the aristocrats was present at their debut, but our heroine noticed that even this place had already undergone stratification. First, a group of girls whose parents hold high titles or have immeasurable wealth, as well as suitable pedigree, they occupy the second floor. They formed their tight circle without the need to go down, of course, among the ladies from the first floor, many of whom dream of getting to them. Secondly, those who have a lot of money but a low title, or have a high title but lack influence, are the girls sitting with her. The purpose of their friendship is to complement each other's shortcomings. Thirdly, those who are without money and proper title but have barely made their way into the circle through connections. Since this cafe has a membership system, not just anyone can enter. so it is of course difficult for people of the third category to even join the group. Our heroine, fortunately, is a special case and does not belong to any group. Suddenly, a voice came from behind asking how Lady Winter had gotten into their blue garden. Perhaps her parents helped her? Haven did not understand why Bianca suddenly came down from the second floor, after which she replied that no, her parents had already departed into the arms of the Lord. The girl pretended to have a sad expression on her face and said that God would protect them. Everyone around immediately began to whisper that it turned out that her family had already fallen. Bianca added that in that case it would not be easy for her to visit the Blue Garden. She herself does not know, but she has heard from many ladies that it is always difficult to get into the garden, since there is a membership. Our heroine thought to herself, what kind of kindergarten is this? Did she really decide to destroy her in this way? So she replied that she didn't even know. Anyway, it was hard to come every day because of fencing lessons. Bianca asked if she could ask what kind of sir was teaching her. Although her acquaintance with knights was limited to Sir Evan and Sir Edium, she noted to herself that she would repay her for the shame she had suffered a month ago and make sure that she never set foot in the Blue Garden again. Haven replied that if she meant the teacher, then it was Sir Gaius Sen. The girl was taken aback, although Evan and Edium are considered the best knights of the Garaf Empire, but could this really be the same Gaius who entered the Riard family? The aristocrats began to say that this could not be, because they had heard that this man no longer took up the sword. Our heroine noted to herself that he was clearly more influential than she thought. Bianca asked how she could believe this, since Sir Gaius had left for the Duchy of Cedar 3 years ago with His Highness the Duke. The girls exclaimed that indeed, the knight had not been in the Empire for a long time. There was no way to verify this. Could it really be a blatant lie? The girl added triumphantly that it was very bad to lie, but she thought to herself that she would never get out of this again. Haven noted to herself that the matter had become more complicated and that it was not so easy to get out of it. 3 years ago, the guy said that despite his absence, if someone suddenly asks who her teacher is, she should answer that it is him, because the lady is his one and only little student, after which she replied that the fact is that she is protected by the Rihard family. The aristocrats could not believe their ears. Could it be that the most powerful family supported her? Bianca could not come to her senses. How was it possible? How could one receive support from such an impregnable fortress? Even though she named the family Rihard, her patron could also be Gaius, and she would somehow manage with that, after which she clarified who exactly was her patron, the knight or who. But Winter replied that no, it was not Sir Gaius, but His Highness Duke Julius. What she heard literally made the girl feel sick, and she almost fainted. After that incident with Lady Bianca, our heroine gained access to the second floor. There were several factors that contributed to this, but as expected, the connection with the Rihard family gave it incredible influence. Thus, very soon, spring came to the Blue Garden. Marietta asked if Haven would accept an invitation to the party where she would be making her debut. She wants Winter to attend. Other aristocrats also really wanted to see her at their event, so they literally surrounded her with invitations in their hands. Our heroine thanked them all, but said that it was time for her to return. After some time, she returned to her home and asked the maid if they could have dinner now. Seeing a pile of invitations, the maid could not believe that all this had happened to her girl. Our heroine immediately began to calm her down and tell her not to cry. Sobbing, Tafa said that she had been worried about her debut for 3 whole years. Who knew that she would grow up so incredible? The knight told her to stop crying, because she was making the lady worry. Haven thought to herself that the 3 of them had been guarding this estate for 3 whole years now, after which she hugged the girl and said that she had worked hard. After which she asked what date would be best to choose. It was time for them to think about a dinner party. The maid replied that it was the beginning of spring, and many of the ladies would be hosting dinner parties. In her opinion, it is better to choose a day a couple of weeks before the end of spring. After all, it is a war for attention. Winter asked them how difficult it would be to invite the Debertan gardeners who helped them. The guy exclaimed that if it works out, then one can't dream of more. Hearing a knock on the door, the maid did not understand who it could be at such a time, so she decided to go and see. It turned out that this letter was from Mrs. Seran. She wrote that all this time they had not had the opportunity to see each other, so she asks to visit her family. Haven decided not to postpone this not particularly pleasant meeting, so the next day they immediately went to her estate. Tafa was very worried and thought about what to do if this damned woman harms the lady. She simply has to help her. Noticing that she was trembling all over, our heroine took her hand and said that she had nothing to worry about because she had her. After some time, the guys arrived at the family estate of the Seran clan. The local maid immediately opened the door and asked if this was the Winter family that was supposed to arrive for a visit today. Tafa came out before her mistress and said that everything was true. She was the only daughter of Baron Winter. After this, they were shown into the drawing room and they waited for a whole hour, but no one appeared. The girl could not resist and asked how much longer they would have to wait to meet the Viscountess. The maid replied that, in fact, Madame was getting ready now. Tafa finally lost her temper and screamed, meaning she was just about to. The maid asked for forgiveness and said that this morning Madame had a lot to do. The girl exclaimed that this meant that the Viscountess was busy and her mistress had plenty of free time or something like that. Such behavior is simply unacceptable. She herself set the time. Our heroine stood up and said that it was enough. They were going back. The maid was confused and asked, they hadn't even met. Haven apologized and said that she had things to do after lunch. But suddenly a female voice was heard exclaiming, "Was Winter really leaving already?" They hadn't seen each other for so long and she missed him very much. Rosanna wanted to hug our heroine, but she abruptly stepped aside and said that they had not seen the Viscountess for a long time. The woman noted that there is no need to call her that. First of all, she is her aunt, so let her call her that. Then she introduced her daughter and said that her name was Sylvia Seran. The girl smiled falsely and said that it was a great honor for her to meet Mrs. Haven Winter. Mom immediately said that they were the same age, so let him just call her Haven. The girl exclaimed that, okay, then she would skip all formalities and call her only by her first name. Our heroine began to get annoyed by this because no one asked her opinion, but decided everything on their own. Their intentions are so transparent that there is simply no limit to their impudence. After which she replied that, well, Lady Seran, she was also extremely glad to meet them. After some time at the table, the woman told her to try this squirrel dish, which was prepared by the chef, who happened to work in the imperial palace. Having tried a piece, Haven noted that the taste was simply terrible. Was this chef really working in the palace? Even during her life as a mercenary, she never got to taste such slop. This is the worst dish in her life. Rosanna suddenly said that when she was 12 years old, she made a small mistake. Then she began to cry dramatically and say that she too was overcome by melancholy because of the death of her older brother, and she made a mistake. Our heroine noted to herself what a fake game this was. She was pretending very poorly. The aunt added that she was very guilty before her. Perhaps she would forgive her for the past. Winter replied that okay, they would pretend that nothing had happened. The woman exclaimed that she had grown up so much during the time they had not seen each other, after which she said that she had heard that she often visited the Blue Garden. How had she managed to get there? The girl replied that she had acquired some small connections. I noted to myself that the connections are quite unusual because the owners of the Blue Garden are Litric's parents. Auntie immediately hugged her daughter and asked if she could then help Sylvia join the membership. You can become an official member of the Blue Garden only if you know someone who is a regular visitor, but a one-time ticket is too expensive to buy from time to time. Haven noted to herself that she had expected something like this, after which she replied that, okay, it wasn't difficult for her. Suddenly, the woman added that she had heard that the Rehard family was patronizing her. Our heroine noted to herself that she had never encountered Sylvia in the garden, so how did she know about this? The aunt exclaimed that this was something she should have told her close relative, so why did she remain silent? Winter looked at her and asked why on earth she had to tell her anything. The woman objected that it was obvious because she was her aunt. Haven replied that this must be why, when Tafa asked her for help, she slapped her, asking why she was telling her this. Rosanna asked why she was asking her for help, and now says that Haven should talk about the support of the Rehard family. Seran objected that she was simply very upset at the time because of her older brother's death, and that since she was patronized by the Rehard family clan, she could also help her family. When Winter noted that this was a very interesting excuse, the woman began to get angry, but her daughter tried to calm her down and said that pride was not the main thing now, let her think only about her debut. Auntie came up to her and asked if she hadn't said that she would forgive for the past, so she really asks her to help Sylvia with her debut. Removing her hand from her shoulders, our heroine said that, of course, she said that she would forgive her, but there was no talk of helping her daughter. If they need money, then let them wash dishes in some cafe, and if they don't have enough connections, then let them fall at the feet of another aristocratic family. After which she added that this is the only thing Haven can advise them in this situation. The woman finally lost her temper, waved her hand and exclaimed how dare she talk to her like that. Winter immediately put a knife to her throat and declared that she was not the only one who knew how to play dirty. After this, she could only become more convinced that there was no point in high society. Compared to a prestigious reputation, she was much more interested in gardening and fencing. So she persuaded Tafa to have a modest debut instead of a lavish reception, and after some time that very day arrived. The maid exclaimed, "Why is she dragging all this around? Let her do her outfit instead." The girl objected that she was already dressed, combed her hair, and even put on makeup. Then she added that she needed to bring something else, but suddenly she tripped and began to fall. Eric immediately caught her and said that she needed to be careful and watch her step. Our heroine asked when he managed to arrive. The guy answered that he just now, since he had a lot to do. Littrick appeared next, indignantly asking why they weren't meeting the guest and saying hello. Haven muttered that she didn't remember sending him an invitation. The young man winked and replied, "How could they miss today?" Then Winter went to the gate and the maid noted that they were a little late. Perhaps something had happened. Our heroine replied that they could, in principle, be late. I thought to myself that most of the ladies would like to at least catch a glimpse of the Duke, who would not be able to attend. Lady Bianca was one of the first to appear, and Winter thanked her for accepting the invitation. After a while, the maid noted that it was somehow strange. Was it possible that no one else would arrive? Our heroine also noted that the atmosphere was somehow strange. We should at least thank them for coming. As she headed in their direction, she heard Marietta say that no one knew whether it was true or a rumor. The girl exclaimed that why would His Highness Julius support the daughter of some baron? It was simply absurd. Let her see for herself. It was obvious from these cheap roses alone, in any case, they simply didn't have enough money for normal ones. Haven began to get angry. How dare she speak like that about the flowers that the florist at Deberton had prepared for her with great care? Bianca stated that if they were so curious, why not ask about it in person? Marietta decided to do this, so she said that they say that she lied about the support from the Rehard family. Is this really true? Winter noted that it was now clear why no one came. The girl objected that not everyone thought so, but in any case, she really asked her to answer. When asked who told them such a thing, the girls replied that Lady Seran. Haven thought to herself that it was to be expected. When Tafia's eyes filled with tears, our heroine said that everything was fine, so she shouldn't even think about crying, since it wasn't her fault. After a while, Littrick called out to her. Our heroine immediately asked what happened, why he was so puffed up. The guy objected, "Is it worth talking about this now, after all? This is her debut." The girl replied that he would live longer and would encounter situations much worse than this. After which, she went upstairs and stated that first of all, she wanted to express her gratitude to everyone who accepted her invitation. She knows that they have honored the evening with their presence to find out whether the Richard family line supports her. There are also those who were very much hoping to meet someone from this dynasty today. But this is the estate of the Winter family. Moreover, her name is not the girl who is patronized by the Rehard family, but Haven. So if they were expecting a reception from the Richard family and not from Winter, it was not too late to leave this evening. When she came down, Littrick hugged her and said he didn't want to admit it, but it was cool. Suddenly, Rosanna's voice was heard, congratulating her on her debut, and her daughter congratulated her on her 15th birthday. After which, Sylvia handed her a gift and said that they had prepared it for the occasion of her debut. Perhaps she will open it right here, because they chose it with special care. When our heroine opened the box, she was speechless for a second. The girl exclaimed that it was especially for her because she was madly in love with the Rehard family line. It turned out that dear relatives presented her with a biography of this family. Auntie added that she likes Rehard so much that she even dreams about them. It is unlikely that she was disappointed by this gift. The girls around were indignant that it was very indecent, like the Seran family line, but no upbringing. Our heroine calmly replied that she thanked them for such a gift, a rather interesting little book. Sylvia did not calm down and asked that perhaps she liked not the Richard family itself, but His Highness Duke Julius. Then they should buy a biography of His Highness. Haven was already completely outraged by this, so she began to get angry and asked to repeat what she had just said. After which, she swung the same biography in order to hit her on the head. But as soon as the corner of the book was near the top of her head, Winter stopped abruptly. Then she asked why she was so scared, because Haven just wanted to joke a little as thanks for the book. After all, they are relatives, cousins after all. The woman screamed at her to stop with her lousy lies. She meant that nonsense about the connection with the Richard family line. Did she really hope for a debut so much that she wanted to spend a dinner party even by deception? Sylvia supported her and shouted that everything was correct. It was a complete scam, and she was a fraud. Suddenly the Duke's voice was heard, saying that yes, it was a complete hoax. The Richard family had not published such a book. Why does a publishing house still exist that released a book without the permission of the Richard family? The woman started muttering that she shouldn't get the wrong idea. She just bought it in a store. They were sure that Haven had made it all up. The young man hissed that he had not asked for a pathetic excuse, but for the name of a bookstore. When there was a deathly silence, the guy stated that he felt that there was no point in continuing this conversation, after which he gave orders to Gaius to find out from the Seran family about the publisher of this book. After some time, Haven asked when he managed to return. The guy answered that 3 or 4 hours ago. Our heroine was surprised to herself that it turned out that he rushed here as soon as he returned, after which she asked why there was such a rush. The young man objected that there was no need to ask the obvious, because the young man returned from the war alive, as he promised. A few days later, the girls asked how she managed to get close to Mr. Julius. It turns out that she often visits the Duke's castle, doesn't she? If the chance arises, then let him definitely take them with him. Our heroine objected that not at all. She and his lordship are not that close, but the girls said that they had secluded themselves during her debut. Haven explained that she heard that he was present at the debut because Mr. Gaius is her teacher. She thought to herself that she knew it would happen this way. She needed to quickly sort out the rumors that connected her and Julius. One of the girls asked how it happened that the Richard family line began to support her. Our heroine was confused by such a question and did not even know what to answer right away. A voice came from behind, asking why Lady Spicio was asking about this at all. Bianca added that she really hopes that she doesn't think she will be able to get support from the Richard family either. When the girl got angry and started to leave, the girl said that she wanted to ask one question. What kind of relationship does she have with the owner of the Blue Garden, Sir Littrick? Winter replied that they were friends. He was one of Mr. Gaius's admirers, and so they became close. The girl asked what then about the gentleman who waits in front of the garden every time she comes. Our heroine replied that this guy is also a close friend to her, after which she felt a bit awkward, so she said that she would go before the rain got any stronger. Then she went out to Eric and asked what he was waiting for there anyway, since it was raining. The aristocrats in the background admired that he looked just like a hero from a novel. Haven added that she would have run anyway. The rain wasn't particularly heavy, so it wouldn't be scary to get wet under it. Suddenly, the Duke's voice was heard, stating that she had finally come out of there. The young man was already about to leave if she had stayed even a little longer. Haven asked, dumbfounded, what brought the young man here in the first place. His lordship explained that, in fact, they had one unfinished conversation left. On the day of her debut, he asked her if she remembered a conversation they had 3 years ago before he left. The Duke said that if he returned alive, then she would tell him who she really was. The guy survived and came back, so now let her answer, as she promised, who she is. Winter had nothing to say to Julius, or rather, she could not give the answer that the Duke wanted to hear. Eric suddenly hugged her and said that it was raining cats and dogs, and that she should be careful not to get wet. Richard really didn't like that this bastard dared to put his hand on the girl's shoulder. It was very annoying. The aristocrats immediately began to discuss. What other conversation? She said that nothing connected them, but obviously this is not true, and the atmosphere between these gentlemen is tense. Are they really love rivals? Suddenly the young man approached Eric and literally pulled our heroine out of his hands, after which he stated that he had seen this youth many times, including the last time. The young man frowned and objected that his name was not Young Man, but Eric Milton. The girl noted to herself that everything was lost. She had proven to everyone that they were not acquainted. Everything had collapsed. What should she do now? Suddenly Eric pulled her hand back and said that it was time to go home and he would walk her home. But Julius held her by the other hand and had no intention of letting her go anywhere, after which he hissed that he could see her off himself. Then he abruptly began to leave the blue garden, dragging our heroine along with him. Eric was very disappointed because once again, just like in the forest, he let her go. On the way, Haven thought that she was not ready to answer the question that day, so she ran away. She is no longer Ilian, who stood with one foot in the grave every moment of her life. Her current name is Haven Winter, and she wants to take care of and protect the people she loves. When they arrived at the place, Gaius asked if she would follow Mr. Julius. The girl followed him and asked where he was going, but he did not answer. After some time, he stopped in front of the Sillet bakery. Our heroine immediately began to get nervous and asked if perhaps it would be better for them to return to the carriage. But the guy suddenly opened the doors, and immediately a voice was heard that said, "Welcome. Do they want anything specific because she was just about to bake cookies, or how about sandwiches?" Haven thought to herself that Sillet's bakery was cheap and not far away, so she had been there often during Ilian's time. But why this particular place? Winter, I just can't understand what the young man is trying to achieve now. Then she noticed the baguette and noted to herself that this was the only thing edible here. She couldn't miss it. The Duke thought exactly the same, so it happened that they grabbed him at the same time. And then they began to argue among themselves and tell the other to let go, but they both loved baguettes. When the young man told her again to let him go, the girl flared up and said that there was only one baguette here. How could she let him go? Let him take a sandwich, since the hostess herself recommended it. The young man objected that she should eat it herself, but Haven replied that she did not like sandwiches. The girl never eats them, even if Tafa cooked them, but Richard asked why she doesn't like them. Our heroine replied that she didn't like the feeling. Didn't the vegetables go stale when they were left for a long time? And that wasn't to her taste. Suddenly the bakery owner said, "Wait a minute, isn't that Yuli?" The girl noted to herself that something was going wrong, and immediately said that it was His Grace Duke Richard. The woman objected that it was strange, and he looked so much like that impudent boy that Ilian had brought. Winter said, "If this boy would come back here, let the auntie not do it again. Otherwise, she will be arrested for insulting an aristocrat." Already on the street, when Haven was happy that she had finally won back the baguette, the guy asked how she was so sure that he was not Yuli, because he could have been acquainted with the bakery owner. When our heroine replied that she did not understand what he was talking about, the young man repeated his question. How could she be so sure? The girl replied that she just thought it might cause him problems, that's all, and was he familiar with her or what? Suddenly, the doors swung open and the woman exclaimed that she was right. This boy was the same Yuli. Our heroine tried to object that she shouldn't throw words around. Genry gave him money and told him not to go hungry. There is not much here, but if he wants to eat, let him go to the Silent bakery and buy something there. It's okay if he doesn't have enough, because the woman left a deposit there. It was always like this. She, busy, gave him money and went away for some time to do something. But he didn't care about either money or food. He needed something completely different. When she returned, she asked if he had been waiting all this time for Ilian to return. Genry noted that the house was so quiet that she had already decided that he had taken all the money from the house and run away, and the baby turned out to be a fool who had not even spent what they had given him. Then she asked if he wasn't hungry. The boy answered that he was hungry. She asked the question, then didn't he need to eat? Suddenly, the boy asked him to listen and told her not to go to work. The woman asked, "What do you mean? Who will earn the money, him or what?" The little one replied that he was not joking. If he earns money on his own, will she stay by his side? The bakery owner shouted that so be it, she would leave, but only for the sake of the girl who came with him. Haven told her to be careful with her words. She would be imprisoned for insulting the aristocracy. When the young man approached her and covered her with an umbrella, the girl objected that she could do without it, but he replied that it was not for her. The baguette would get soggy. On the way, Haven said that the carriage was in the other direction. Weren't they going to her? The guy replied that the winter estate wasn't that far, they could walk. Our heroine replied that this was true, but the rain was so heavy, his clothes would get wet. Wouldn't it be better to use a map? The Duke sighed heavily, pressed her to himself and said that if anyone saw from the outside, they would think that he was a leper, or she would come closer only when his clothes were soaked to the skin. Haven objected that this was not the point. His lordship thought to himself that he had come here because he had to hear an answer. All those moments when her image echoed Ilian Genry, things that can only be explained by the fact that it was her. Even now, the young man has a strong feeling that he is walking down the street right next to her, after which he said that among his acquaintances there was also a baguette lover. Every morning she bought a baguette, threw it to the child with still weak teeth, and left. She brought it even in the cold winter, saying that the baguette was still warm and delicious. Leaving nothing for herself, Haven asked who he was talking about. The guy answered that he was talking about Ilian Genry. While Winter was surprised that he hadn't forgotten, the young man added that she was really going to say that it was a coincidence once again. After some time, when our heroine said that she wanted to go for a walk, the maid handed her a bag of bread and told her to take it with her. On the way, Winter thought that yesterday the rain was pouring down as if it was not going to stop. It must have all been for this clear, bright blue sky. I need to hurry to Grandma Taffy to keep her company. When she opened the door, she saw no one. It didn't look like she was at home, but the old woman wouldn't leave him unattended at that hour, so some kind of incomprehensible, anxious premonition arose. Our heroine ran through the streets and shouted her name, but could not find the woman anywhere. Suddenly a cry was heard for the woman to be careful, because horses were galloping right in front of her. It was an old woman who was hit right before our heroine's eyes. Thus, Tafa died. In the time of Ilian, she passed away only after 3 years. But then it did not happen like that. She passed away, having lived out the time allotted to her. If Haven had only known that her death would be so painful, she would have tried to change the future by any means necessary, because no matter what anyone said, she was her only family. Then she remembered how the old woman said that she looked at her, and it was written right on her face that she had come from somewhere to die in a foreign land. Genry was indignant, that in fact she was very capable. The woman objected that she didn't know anyone, and it was immediately clear from her appearance that she was in the center for the first time. Then she added that there is a shortage of workers, but there is still a way. At least he will work. At 20 years old, she helped her settle in the center after living in the mountains, and Tafa tried harder than anyone to stop her when she declared that she would become a mercenary. The woman screamed that Ilian had completely lost her mind, that even men die on this job, and where was she going despite the rudeness? She always had a warm heart. After which our heroine burst into tears and asked for forgiveness for not helping her leave in peace. Suddenly a female voice was heard, which told Raoul that there was no need to fidget. It was Ilian with a child in her arms who said that if Granny was about to leave, she could have said at least something before leaving. After which the woman came closer and said that Tafa's friend had returned. After some time, Haven thought about what she assumed was alive and somewhere walking on this earth, but to encounter in person. It turned out to be much more painful than she thought, but the baby was born safely. Living under the name Haven Winter, she saw how the fates of many had changed compared to her previous life. The war that ended in the past dragged on for 3 years, the fact that Julius left to put an end to it. The old woman's death occurred 3 years earlier, and everything happened differently. Plus, today's meeting with Ilian Genry and Raoul took place. Then she thought that if fate could change so much, then it turns out that she really could fix the boy's future. Suddenly, Dino appeared in the room and asked if she was okay. The girl pretended not to understand what he was talking about. The girl asked him if he was worried about her. The guy replied that he was worried about her too, but in the Duke's castle even more so. Sir Gaius was worried that she did not come to his lesson. He said that Haven would not skip without a reason. Our heroine replied that, if you think about it, during the debut, they also had to postpone lessons, but since he was so worried, it was necessary to visit today. Then she added that he should warn her if Ilian Genry visited the ducal castle in the future. Meanwhile, everyone at the estate was discussing that the woman had returned, and perhaps then she would once again take on the protection of His Grace the Duke. Another replied that no, they say she won't be long, she'll drop by somewhere around lunchtime just to say hello. Our heroine noted to herself that the news had already reached here. When she entered the training room, she immediately apologized to Mr. Gaius for being late. They hadn't seen each other in class for a long time. The guy asked if she was doing well. He never got a chance to say hello to her. Winter replied that yes, what could happen to her? But, on the other hand, her fencing skills had noticeably improved in his absence, and the young man noted that Sir Lex had worked hard. Then the young man added that he hadn't had time to tell her something at all. To be honest, Ilian Genri had returned to the capital. Because of this, he has more work to do, and it seems that he will not be able to conduct today's lesson. The girl asked why the return of this woman suddenly added to his worries, but she thought to herself that she was just a mercenary who once played the role of Julius's bodyguard. A little later, the Duke stated that she had brought a child. Ilian asked if the rumors had already reached him, after which she added that he was a very sweet child. Julius interrupted her and asked if it was true that he was her son. The woman replied that, naturally, her son was the only one for her. While our heroine was eavesdropping, the young man asked who his father was. Genri said that he knows that she took part in the War of the Duchy of Situr. He died on the battlefield. The Duke began to get angry and asked if she was going to raise the child alone. The mercenary replied that of course it was her own blood. His lordship asked if this meant that she would not go anywhere now. The woman said that she would leave the capital tomorrow because she had been assigned a task. Her friend had died, so she had stopped by the capital for a short while. In fact, it was really time for her to go. Her son was probably already tired of waiting. Haven decided to speak up and said that she didn't mean to eavesdrop, but he seemed to be in a bad mood. The guy replied that you could say that, well, the desire to kill someone can only be characterized by a bad mood. Winter said that everything can be resolved through conversation. When something doesn't suit him, let him try to say it directly. If that doesn't work, then in any case people can't be killed. The young man replied that there was no need to worry, because the one he wanted to kill was already dead. After some time, the guy noted that she had already finished. The girl replied that she had just run the last lap. The young man looked somewhat sad, so our heroine asked if something had happened. Gaius said that earlier she said that she was friends with Mrs. Ilian. The girl replied that yes, although, to be honest, they are not that close. The young man asked her if she knew anything about the lady's son, whose name was Raoul Genri. Haven was surprised to herself that he was concerned about this question, but out loud she answered that if he wanted to ask about his father, it was Michael Seaver. Although he died in the war, the knight was very stunned that she knew who the child's father was. Our heroine added that this is Ilian's friend. They were together in the mercenary squad Green Dawn. When the young man asked if they were close, the girl replied that, if I may say so. Then she began to remember how the guy looked into her room and said that everyone downstairs was asking when she would come down. The woman replied that she should forget about it and tell him that she was lazy. She was falling off her feet from fatigue. What kind of drink was there? The young man objected that they needed to go after all. Everyone loved her very much. Michael was very gentle and did not fit into the ranks of rough and uncouth mercenaries. When he sat down on the bed, Ilian was indignant that he had nothing better to do. But the guy replied that it was okay. Her company was enough for him. His nobility, which came from nowhere, even led her to think that he was from an aristocratic family. When the young man said that the matter was finished and asked what she would do now, the woman replied that she did not know. Since she had some free time, she was thinking about going to the capital. She missed the hot tea that the old woman brewed. The guy asked if she was talking about Grandma Tafa, whom she had talked about last time, and she replied that she was. Then she added that she would be lonely without her, and the young man asked if it wasn't she who was lonely. The young man asked her if she was sure that the young man was dead. Our heroine noted to herself that she personally sent Michael's body on its final journey. Then she asked how Julius was doing. Gaius answered that, to be honest, he had insomnia again. The girl asked why. Was it because Ilian had a child? The knight objected that not at all. His lordship simply could not sleep. Haven asked that maybe she should visit him again then. The guy asked her for forgiveness and said that the master had forbidden her to visit him. Our heroine could not understand what was happening, why he did not want to meet with her. A month later, the butler announced that he would now be her new teacher. Count Belt noted that she was a very nice lady. He does not know whether she has heard of his reputation, but the lessons of the recently famous scholar, Mr. Cedric, were also conducted by him. Haven couldn't get the fact out of her head that she hadn't been able to meet Julius for a month. She still didn't understand the reason why he didn't want to meet her, so they just each lived their own lives, with the thought that after the mercenary left, the best time had come. The teacher said that he really didn't know if she would be able to handle his lessons. Before that, she had been taught by Baron Farta, whose name he had never heard. Our heroine replied that he did not attach much importance to fame, but she was indignant at his contemptuous attitude. The man replied that in any case, since he was hired by the Riard family, he would also do his best. Then he put a stack of books in front of her and said that they needed to be studied for the next lesson. The girl noted to herself that he had not yet taught her anything, but was already giving her a mountain of homework. She already understands how their lessons will take place, after which she stood up and said that she needed to go to the restroom. On the way, she accidentally met the Duke, whose assistant was reporting to him that he had an audience with the Emperor planned for the afternoon. The girl bowed to him, but the young man simply walked past her in silence. After they had walked some distance, Haven noticed that a bottle of sleeping pills was still lying on the floor. When Haven picked it up from the floor, she saw that it said it was a sleeping pill for monsters, which left her completely confused. What is really happening to the young man? How can we find an explanation for this? After which she noted that it was necessary to convey this to him. If he could not meet, then at least he would see it. After some time, she caught up with Gaius and said that she found this, so she thought she should return it. On 14/5/40, the young man was confused and began to think about what to answer her in order to make it look believable. But our heroine added that the hunting season is coming soon apparently. This is exactly what it's for. The young man was delighted and replied that everything was correct, but Haven said that since the thing had been returned, it would go. Then the assistant informed Julius that Mrs. Winter had returned this to him. Seeing that it was a sleeping potion for monsters, the boy thought to himself that he no longer wanted to be saved by anyone other than Ilian. A few days later, our heroine informed the teacher that she had decided everything. She sees that he has no desire to conduct the lesson, so she returns. The man was indignant, who allowed her to get up. Haven went to the door, accompanied by the Count's cries of where she was going. On the way, the girl thought about how she would spend the remaining time. If she returned now, the maid would worry, and Julius, as expected, had no desire to see her. He obviously knew she had come, but he still didn't bother to even give her a glance. Our heroine thought that he opened his soul to her, so why is he behaving this way now? When she came to her senses from her thoughts, she realized that her legs had led her to the old woman's house. But the woman is no longer in this world, so there is no one to call her Ilian. Soon all traces of Tafa's presence in this world will disappear from this place too. Suddenly she heard some rustling and could not understand where this sound was coming from. Perhaps it was thieves, but there was absolutely nothing to steal in this place. After which she remembered that around this time she was being persecuted for breaking into the Marquis's house and stealing information. Therefore she took the knife in her hands and noted to herself that in any case she must not lose her vigilance. Then she thought that there was no other way out, so she decided to attack the one hiding behind the curtain first. It turned out to be the Duke, who knocked the weapon out of her hands, twisted her arms, and threw her to the ground. Haven began to struggle and try to escape from his hands. The guy asked what she was doing there, but she told him to let her go first. When the girl muttered that she was acquainted with Ilian, the young man noted that there was not a drop of sincerity in her justification. Suddenly, voices began to be heard from outside that they had heard that this girl, Ilian Genry, was always here when she came to the capital. So our heroine grabbed Julius by the hand and showed him to be quiet, after which she pointed her finger at the closet, as if explaining that it was necessary to hide there. Haven thought that she understood that nothing could be done, but they had to appear right now. The boys noted that the curtain was somehow strange. One of them said that it seemed to him that there had been a fight with daggers here. Even if there was a fight here, she would have already disappeared anyway. Why would she hide? The Duke immediately remembered the situation from his childhood, when Genry hid him in the closet and thought that her image was again being superimposed on Haven. After the mercenaries decided to leave, our heroine breathed a sigh of relief, but then it dawned on her that they were face to face with Julius. When they got out of the closet, the Duke suddenly had a headache. The girl immediately asked if Julius was okay, but he replied that there was no need to address him frivolously. After this, the young man began to lose consciousness and literally fell into the arms of our heroine. The young man thought to himself why she looked so much like Ilian Genry, or rather, it even seemed to him as if it were she herself. He cannot forget a single moment since he was born. His mother's cry sometimes rings in his ears as it came out of her belly. This monster simply cannot be her child. It is impossible. The woman who acted as if she could only give love left him in a high-pointed tower where no human hand could reach. The boy spent 2 years locked up without a drop of water, but still managed to survive. And when he had completely assumed the form of a man, leaving not a single scale on his body, he was able to leave that place through the efforts of the former duke. The baby started talking at the age of 3, and at the age of 5 he was already fluently reading books that even adults had difficulty with. But even so, he still terrified the woman who gave birth to him. However, the boy didn't care, because he knew perfectly well that he was not an ordinary person. Amid the shouts of the guards that the Duke had given the order to find him quickly, the butler said that he needed to leave here quickly. Now, in this estate there is no one who would be on his side. His lordship the Duke cannot be trusted either. The man shouted after him that the boy must survive and return sooner or later. The kid only knew that someone had set traps to drive him out of the estate. He could have easily made them disappear, but he didn't. Julius deliberately threw his clothes somewhere in order to lead the mercenaries in the right direction. Ryard didn't understand what the point was for him to survive, but Spencer's scream was in his ears that he absolutely had to survive. That is why he knocked on the door of some dilapidated house and saw Ilian in front of him. It's amazing, but that woman didn't care about his appearance, title, and everything else. After he asked her to hide him, the woman said she didn't like to get involved in trouble, but let him in anyway. When the boy wanted to climb into the closet, a stranger stopped him and told him to hide in the chest of drawers. She didn't even have any reason to hide him, but she told the mercenaries that the dark-haired child ran in a completely different direction. Ilian could have easily given him away. Then for the first time since birth, the moonlight seemed beautiful to him. When they left, the boy said that she could smoke. Since he didn't care, the woman objected that this was not the way to speak to adults. You need to say that you don't mind if she smokes, let her repeat it, and the baby will obey her. The woman ruffled his hair and asked for forgiveness, saying that she does not smoke in front of children. Having learned that his name was Julius, Genry said that she would call him Yuli. After this, Richard even wanted to live a little, not as a dragon, but as a human. After some time, when the young man came to his senses, he could not understand how long he had slept. Then he looked out the window and noted that, judging by the sunset, it was no less than 3 to 4 hours. Haven's help irritated him greatly, as he didn't need anyone except Ilian Genry. His thoughts were interrupted by Winter's voice, who stated that he had woken up. Looking at his displeased expression, the girl noted to herself that she shouldn't have come back. Why bother at all? A few hours ago, when the guy lost consciousness, our heroine began to panic because she did not understand what happened to him. Touching his forehead, she realized that the Duke had no fever. Had he simply suddenly fallen asleep? Then she dragged him with great difficulty onto the sofa, as he was very heavy. Then she saw the bottle of sleeping pills on the floor again and wondered how much he had taken. What does Ilian Genry mean to him that he grieves so much? Let him rest a little for now. Now, when the guy came to his senses, he simply stood up silently and began to leave. Haven couldn't let him go that easily, so she exclaimed why he didn't let her into the bedroom, while she wondered to herself why he locked his heart when she thought they were getting closer. Unexpectedly, the young man answered, because she was not Ilian Genry. Our heroine couldn't stand it and screamed, "Who the hell is she to him?" His lordship became very serious, and it seemed that even the air around him became heavier, after which he replied that she was his everything. After some time, the aristocrats exclaimed that they had not seen each other for a long time. Why had she not been in the Blue Garden for so long? The girl noted to herself that if Tafa had not reminded her, she would have completely forgotten about everything, after which she replied that she needed to sit down first. One of them asked what the outcome was with his Grace Duke Richard. That day, he and another gentleman had a real psychological war. It seemed to them that Julius had some feelings for her. Haven replied that not at all. She had something to convey to his lordship, so he was in a bit of a hurry, but to himself he wondered if this topic was really their goal after all. Suddenly the guard's voice was heard, saying that they were full, so he couldn't let them in. The woman was indignant. Did he know who she was? They just wanted to see Lady Winter. Our heroine noted to herself that people were starting to gather around, so she needed to get out of there quickly. After which she said that she would go to the restroom. She would be there soon, let them wait a little. Standing around the corner, the girl mentally asked the maid for forgiveness because her social activity was crying. Everyone around is obsessed with the fact that she is somehow connected with the Richard family. It is not easy to endure this turmoil. Suddenly Litrick appeared, who asked what was with her appearance, whether she really came from an aristocratic family. The girl asked in what sense. It seemed clean after all. The guy asked if she was wearing a dress at all. And anyway, she just came out of the blue garden, and the sun hadn't even set yet. Our heroine replied that she still had things to do, and how did he even end up here? The young man replied that he had some errand to run in the blue garden, and she knew that her parents had been very concerned about this place lately. Haven wondered to herself whether this man would blab about her leaving. Then she took his hand and asked if he knew what Eric had been doing lately. The young man exclaimed that she had not heard anything, and Milton became a knightly cadet. Our heroine was very surprised. Didn't he like sailing ships? Because he even made their models. Litrick asked if she remembered the day when she first came to the Blue Garden, and they were still together. Eric then rushed over and asked why there were only the two of them, and she answered him. Then the young man added that she answered him that the young man was not a knight. The girl was surprised why he needed this. The guy objected that Eric would have stayed away after such a statement from her. Right from the next day, he began to prepare for training, and this month he barely managed to enter. So they also rarely see each other. He is no longer a cadet, but an official knight. He even received a new sword. When Winter told him to take care of him, since the guy was not like that in childhood, but as he grew up he became completely unsociable and is not friends with emotions, the young man was very surprised. The young man asked if she really knew nothing. Our heroine asked what exactly. Litrick replied that he, of all people, knows how to express emotions, but she's just not interested in it. Let him take a look at him at least once someday. There is no one more talkative than Eric. After some time, the teacher noted that she had not learned anything today either. She could not remember even such basic things. Let her get up. When she knelt down in front of him, the man began to hit her legs hard with a pointer. Having finished tormenting her, the Count told her to go to the toilet. When the girl was barely walking down the corridor, she accidentally collided with Eric. When asked what he was doing here, the guy scratched his head and muttered that he forgot to tell her. After which, the young man announced that he was now a cadet of the Rehard family. Remembering Litrick's words about how the guy couldn't stay away after her statement, our heroine asked him directly if he liked her. The young man began to get noticeably nervous and asked why she even thought of that. Haven explained that he already loved ships, and now he suddenly became a cadet. Why? Eric replied that it was just cool, and Litrick is a knight too. Winter began to say that since he was doing what he loved, then okay, but then she saw the Duke. After which she added that she immediately says that there is no need to fall in love with her. The guy asked why. But she did not answer his question, because she said that it was time for her to leave. They would see each other a little later. Eric knelt down on one knee and said that he greeted his lordship Duke Richard and Lord Gaius. The young man noted that he was also a friend of Haven. The young man replied that everything was correct. Suddenly, the Duke turned around and said that Winter had a strange gait, who was her new teacher. When he was told that it was Count Gelt, Julius told him to tell him not to use the rod in class. After some time, the young man remembered her words about not falling in love with her and did not understand why he could not love her. The girl thought that soon the year 223rd according to the giraffe calendar would come. That very winter was approaching. The maid asked if something had happened. After winter she would come of age, but she did not look happy. Our heroine replied that winter was just coming, so she must have just given in to her mood. She herself did not notice how 2 years flew by this winter. On the day when a heavy snowfall falls, Raoul will die. If she, or rather Ilian, makes a different choice, will her son be able to survive? Suddenly Litrick appeared, exclaiming whether she had heard the news. Our heroine was indignant that if he broke her table, he would pay 10 times more. The guy exclaimed that no problem, but that's not the point now, after which the young man joyfully announced that Eric had officially become a real knight. You only have to look at the bastard to understand that he has abilities in martial arts. But abilities are one thing. He worked like hell, and even managed to become famous among the cadets. But when he first joined the ranks of the cadets, he seemed so ordinary. But not even a couple of days had passed before he plunged headlong into training. Eric most likely became the second cadet in the Empire to graduate as an external student. By the way, for reference, the first was Mr. Gaius. Maybe that's why everyone was so worried about recruiting him. Not only is he a cadet of the Rehard family, but he's also the best in the class. He himself is now looking for which order to join. Haven asked where he was going. The young man replied that he did not know, perhaps to the knightly order of the Richard family where he was, or perhaps to the imperial palace, then asked what she was planning to do in general. Winter replied that she didn't even know. Her flower business with Uncle Jarek was going well, and lately she had been busy with social events. The guy said that she should at least decorate the estate since the business was flourishing. The young man still cannot believe that only 3 people live in such a huge house. Haven noted to herself that, yes, Tafa was working quite productively, distributing the cleaning by zones, but Dino might feel superfluous due to the fact that the Winter Knightly Order was disbanded. Eric suddenly approached them, and the guy said that they were just talking about him, whether he would join the Knightly Order of Rehard. The young man asked what he was doing here. He replied that he was actually her friend. That's why he came. Our heroine said that she heard that he officially became a knight, so she congratulates him. The boy thanked her, then knelt down in front of her and said that he was asking for permission to enter into the Winter family's subordination, Her Grace Baroness Haven. The girl was confused and said that her family did not have a knightly order. Eric replied that he knew. He was asking to be made a knight of the Winter family. He was not interested in contractors who demand a salary.